hidden, forgotten. This is Harbor Town.
Rock and roll.
Hey.
All right, there it goes.
Harbor Town is an
So,
all
guys, if you have your
new
Twitch
series
up,
from
that's
Miniature Building
good, so you can
Authority,
see the
leader
chat going on.
tabletop
Hey, good
games
evening, everyone.
Unique,
You can hear me,
flexible,
someone
and playable.
say hey
Harbor
and,
Town will take your games to a new
on Twitch, because I always want to make sure that they can hear us. Because like downstairs in the basement, I'll have the area mic off, and then I'll forget 10 minutes after we started, and then finally like, dude, we can't hear you.
Okay.
Happens all the time.
Almost wrote.
I'm trying to watch the Twitch stream as well. But
Yeah, the Twitch stream will be on a couple second delay, but that's okay. So.
sorry, I think I
the
talked.
middle of nowhere, high speed internet version.
Yeah.
Let me
Well,
tell
I'm
you,
in Pleasant Plains, so you're not wrong.
Joe, I upped my Comcast to 1 gigabyte service.
I almost went there. I'm at the 250, I think.
Yeah.
We have the 1 gig service.
I really would recommend it, just because of I've been doing this for 2 years. I know the ins and outs of what the issues
Sure,
have been, and
sure.
that's been a big one. So,
All right.
We're damn near dial-up where I'm at.
Hey, Jay, did you try calling or tagging or messaging or anything?
What's that?
Casey?
He's on that Facebook massive. Can you guys all spam him on that? He'll get the Facebook message, right?
Good.
Because the two places I is the Facebook Messenger and on Discord. They're the two places.
Yeah, let me see if I saw his phone number.
I'm on the chat stream as the White Griffin.
I'm trying to figure out if I can change my name.
White Griffin.
Oops, see, I hit the wrong button out of order, so there we go. Whoops, I hit the wrong button
That's
again.
good.
There we go.
Thank you, Jason. Audio seems to be good. Yep.
Audio's good. Thanks, Jason. Who is Scarrett? Which one of you is Scarrett? Cool.
That's actually my old LG character. True.
Nice.
Nice.
Wasn't that also your email?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it still is.
Still is.
Since I never left WotC Organized Play, I've kept that email the whole time.
Cool.
I still get people who email me from 20 years ago, hoping it's the same email, and it is.
Wow.
Still wanting certs, I'll bet.
Good.
Can you send me old certs? Yeah.
Hey,
I
Jay,
played this one
Yes.
interactive back in 2004.
Yes.
are we able to change what our name says while we're in stream?
I think we can. On Twitch, I don't know,
You
but
mean in Zoom?
Yeah.
I do not know.
I think you can in Zoom. I think you.
I
can
think
go
you
in.
got to go into under the website and the settings.
No,
don't
no.
you?
So you go up to your image at the top, and
Right.
there's a mute button, and then the three bullets. You open up the drop down, and there's a rename offer about halfway down.
There it is. Thank you.
Vernon's picture took over yours, so I thought you changed your name to Vernon.
It's a popular name.
Very popular.
So, Casey, who's Mr. Gung Ho for this, is one MIA. That's interesting. Well, we're all Gung Ho for it, so let me rephrase that. But
We'll shame
Like
him
I've
later.
done this before. I
he may have gotten held up work-wise or something. Who knows?
don't know. Or just held on. He is from the Bandit Kingdom, so it wouldn't be out of order.
Yeah, they're all criminals there.
Yeah.
Wait a minute now.
Well, I'm not saying something from Divers.
Hey, what? I don't know what you're talking about. We're innocent. I don't know what the crime is, but I'm sure I'm innocent of it.
And if not, you'll make sure you.
That's right.
Didn't the Thieves Guild had a benefit where if you sold something and you got caught, you had to pay like 20% of it back?
No, so that is not. So the city had taxes crimes, but the tax is paid to the local constabulary. So when you're caught committing a crime, you pay the person who catches you, and depending on how much you pay them determines whether or not you keep the thing you were caught with.
Fundraiser event ad, guys. It's coming up February 15th. All Greyhawk, guys. It's going to be awesome. And supposedly Casey's driving down here to play in it.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so you can shame him in person.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, me too.
One.
Yeah, Anna's playing in it as well, remotely, though.
I'm going to bring my new book to show you.
Awesome, man. I can't wait to see that.
Oh my gosh. So I'm actually curious. Have any of y'all ever heard of or seen the graphic novel called Vecna and the Dragon?
Yes.
Heard of.
I heard of it, but never seen it.
It's
No, I haven't.
incredibly rare. There are very few of them printed, but it was an official during third edition. It was an official graphic novel. It was intended to be a series. It was the entire story of Vecna. They only ended up the first one was from his childhood to I was talking to Jay about it the other day. He had never heard of it, so he Googled it. And I have been watching it for years. If he happened to find one that popped up on eBay.
Yeah, that was weird. It just popped up.
And so, but it was a part of a whole set of all kinds of stuff related to that fight. And the guy was asking like $400 or $500, and I watched the auction for about a week, and I talked him into breaking the auction apart, and he sold me the one book. And so
Nice.
it's already in shipment to me. Ah, you twerp, you have one.
Ah!
Hey, show that again. Wow. I have no
Here
idea.
comes the entry ad for you guys. Living Greyhawk.
Hey, that's us.
I even have Casey's figure for his half orc that he's playing from Living Greyhawk in the fundraiser.
Oh no.
Well, we know who's dying first.
Who's dying first?
I sure hope he can. I sure hope he makes it in.
Did anyone get a response on anything?
No.
Okay, well,
The message him on Facebook is over.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at that swan and calling it a duck. Yeah, let's not call it a duck, please. Let's call it at least a goose. Let's use swans.
thank you for sending me that information. So I had a couple of extra things to put up. I appreciate it. I put up some of the Greyhawk. Definitely. Hey, Rox, what's going on? Got a lot of regulars on. Got a lot of new people on. Mostly people that are here. Thank you. Gonna have a really great discussion tonight. So sit tight.
So JP, I didn't actually. Your thing says Tuesmid County First. Is that?
Yep. I became a triad while in Tusman, which is the province of Quebec up there.
Right.
And I moved to Colorado in 2005, and they needed someone, and so I jumped in and closed off the storyline. They had a good group over there.
Here we go. Going live. You can finish that story. That's cool. So hey,
yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a really exciting, and we've all been looking forward to this for, I'd say, 2 months. Legends and Lore latest episode, just titled Living Greyhawk. And we got regular hosts, myself, we got Anna Meyer, we got Mike Bridges, and we have a special host tonight. We have Christoph Nolan. Christoph, why don't you say hello real quick, and people know you, but just to say hey. So what do you got?
I know nobody knows who I am.
Well, come on. But so we have Christoph Nolan, and then we have 4 fantastic. You were all triads, correct? Or okay, all right.
Yeah.
So let's start and just say hello, and thank you everyone for coming on. And let's introduce everyone. Let's start. I'm going to go right down the list how in order. Casey's not on, so he's last. Greg, why don't you say hello?
Hey, I was POC for High Folk for about 3 months in or 4 months into the campaign. I think I started, give or take. So I missed sort of the planning stages, and then took over almost right away, and then went almost.
Here we go.
So
Here it comes. Yep.
Aha, there he goes.
Oh,
Shame.
You made it.
Shame.
shame.
He's going for his headset, so.
So he didn't even hear us mocking him.
Yeah.
That's the great
Yep.
thing. So,
Yep.
do it now while you can.
Greg, thank
You're on,
you.
Casey.
Really appreciate you coming on tonight, Greg. That is awesome. And let's go to next. We'll go to JP.
My name is JP Chaplow. I was I served as POC for Tusmet up in Canada, and then I moved to Colorado where I took over the plots for 2006 to the end of the campaign. Yay.
Excellent.
Nice.
Thank you for taking the time out to come on tonight. How about Vernon?
Hi, I'm Vernon Vincent. I was the POC, in case you're sensing a theme here, for Verbabank, which was Illinois and Indiana, and I served my time from 2004 to 2008, the end of the campaign, and it was a ton of fun.
Excellent.
Nice.
I like that he served time.
I probably hold the record for the most number of non-resignation resignations of any triad, that's for sure.
Wow.
No, there's no might in that comment. We still love you though.
Hey, I imagine you all have some really great stories on the interpersonal stuff that went on over 8 years. You know, I can imagine keeping things together over that time was a challenge, right? You know?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. All righty, Joe.
Yeah. So for those watching, each region was run by a group of 3 administrators, hence triad. Almost always that triad had a single point of contact, POC, which I have a feeling is everyone that is here tonight. I was the POC for the Free City of Divers. That is Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa from 2004 to 2006, which is probably the shortest tenure here. In that time, I did write 28 adventures.
Wow.
So that's probably why I have the shortest tenure here. But I have worked with all these gentlemen over time.
You may see some of your names up here. I'm getting my numbers caught up. Well, Joe, thanks for coming on. And Joe does some streaming, and we'll at the end of the night we'll do some shout outs as to what Joe's up to. He's doing Twitch as well, which was a cool thing to hear. So, and then last and latest, Casey, how are you?
Doing good. Sorry I'm late.
It's okay,
Apologize.
you made
Typical BKer. You know, can't keep a friggin' schedule. And I'm a little bit of a diva. So there's that.
That's okay.
Little
I
bit.
agree.
Don't sell yourself short.
So, Casey, what territory did you have? I'm saying Band of Kingdoms, right?
Band of Kingdoms started off in about 2003 assisting the meta-regional triad member for my region, Thomas Brister, and then took over special missions, and then became his assistant, and then just kind of evolved into the role of triad member after he had stepped down. And like many of the people on the board here tonight, it's also great to see these familiar faces. It's been a long time. Wore multiple hats during the campaign, starting as just an adventure writer and then going up to meta and plots. I don't think I actually was ever point of contact officially, although I did often answer questions on our various
No one's here to
boards and
contradict
Yahoo
you, though,
groups.
Casey. So let's say you were
Well,
for consistency.
technically, that I actually, even though I wasn't one of the points of contact with triad members like you guys were, I also actually played in the Band of Kingdoms with Casey.
That is awesome.
Nice.
and survived.
And survived, yeah. I had a character that got to actually save the Casey. What was the name of the famous bar in
The Dirty Dog, or
Yes, thank you. When the city was swarmed by demons, I got a certificate for saving the Dirty Dog.
Okay. Bromium made a great point. What's a triad out there for anyone who's a newer member or even an older member like myself who never participated in Living Greyhawk? So
I'll take that one.
Go
if
ahead,
that's
Joe.
Okay. Yeah. So the entire campaign of Living Greyhawk is worldwide geography broken down into regions, and each region is assigned a geographical area in Earth, which is why we've all been citing various states or provinces. Each region is governed by 3 local administrators, meaning they actually live in that region. They arrange and or write the adventures for that region. They arrange all the extracurricular stuff like meta organizations that your character can join beyond just what happens in the organization. And then they take care of all the actual administration. So there was a joke earlier in the stream about certs. Those were the pieces of paper that you got after playing an adventure that validated everything you earned. And the Triad were responsible for those as well. So basically, we ran local campaigns, and when you put all those local campaigns together, you get a global campaign.
How many? Let me ask this
That's
question.
why you were POC, man.
Yeah, thanks.
I can imagine. So, give me an example as a triad. How many other like satellite games are going on in your area, roughly?
No, Lord.
I'm serious. 10, 100?
Oh, I mean, Illinois corresponded to, Illinois, or Verbabank was Illinois and Indiana. So it's like any reasonably sized city could have Living Greyhawk games playing in it. Chicago, of course, was the 1,600-pound gorilla, but there's Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Bloomington, Normal, Illinois, Carbondale, Illinois, and then any smaller places in between. I mean, you could have 20,000 players easily.
Got some reverb. Got a little reverb. Step back a hair.
I'm sorry.
That's it.
You're
Someone
good.
doesn't have headphones.
Yeah, I think it was a little too close to the mic. I think back a little further will be fine. Yeah.
Yep,
So,
perfect. Yep.
Okay. So you could get paperwork in from like 50 different places.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
And it actually, one of the things that it actually did create, and how I got to meet a lot of these guys, is that, you could go out and, you could only play these games in that region. So if you were in Tusmet, this bad reverb. If you were in Tusmet, you could only play Tusmet games.
Okay.
So, that is how, you got to do that. And then, if you went over to, say, I went to New York State, then I could play Keoland. And then, I think I met Joe when I was moving to Colorado. So I stopped in Michigan for one day. I played a game there. Then I stopped for 4 days in Iowa and played a whole bunch of games. And then I went to Colorado and played even more games. Every one of those were only played in these areas. So,
wow. It sounds like a Herculean task to keep this all organized, which makes me very impressed that you guys got out all the journals and you got out the annuals. I've attached a couple of the journals here for those, and it's impressive that just it all got put together. So, Mike, Anna, what was your experiences with these gentlemen? Anything at all during this era, or?
No, I was unfortunately I was living in the other end of the world. I was still back in Sweden, and I kind of watched it from afar. And I was like, I want to be part of the RPGA, but I tried to become a member, but no one really. And there were actually some games that were, because the Scandinavian countries issued an area, like it was an area or ID that was the Scandinavian countries, and I managed to track down a few people, but then that was just before I moved here, so that was kind of too late. I was so busy with other things. So this was something I read about. I got all the stuff from Living Greyhawk journals, and I was kind of, oh, this is so cool. But I was out of it. So I was one of these people that missed the whole thing, unfortunately.
How about you, Mike?
I was never active in it. I'm living in Illinois, so I would have been in Vernon's backyard. But I mostly, because I'm spoiled and I had already a long-running campaign, plenty of players in my area, that I wasn't really seeking out convention play or running stuff out of game stores for Living Greyhawk. I kind of regret it a little because I would sit in some of the chat rooms like with Casey or Anna and like passively listen to some of the stuff going on in Living Greyhawk. So, yeah.
Hey, it's the same thing for me. I've been playing for 40 years, and because I had my group and my insulated group, I never got involved, and it's kind of a shame. I didn't. So, Christoph,
Yes.
what, let's start off. What would you like to ask everyone here? We'll start you off with a question.
Well, actually, I want to. Joe, a few minutes ago, was talking about the structure and the organization and how it all worked, and that you could carry your character over, from one to the other, and anywhere you traveled, and you got certs. Certs were a fairly big deal. I actually want to show. This was. Let's see if I can not get a reflection on this. This is actually the book I kept. That was my character at the time.
Oh, cool.
And it's just my own art I did on the front, but in the inside of it, I have all of the certs and whatnot that went with that character.
And how much is okay? So you basically have an entire binder full of information there on the one character, just one. Wow.
Right, and so each one, like, it would have particular where you had earned favor with a faction, or and I would have to collect the little points and note when I had points, so that if I had enough, I could become a member of that faction, or I could become a leader of that faction, all that kind of stuff. And it involved a lot of tracking. There were always certs for everything, and all the triads had to keep up with all of the points, how many times they had issued a particular favor, and how many members, all of the different factions, and all of these things had a massive amount of organization. So all of these guys were doing, and one of the most important things, they were all doing this work ostensibly for Wizards of the Coast through the RPGA, but they were doing all of this as fans. And this entire organization was all fan driven, and all fan written, all fan run. And so these guys were doing this in their time. One of my questions for everybody is basically like, how much time did you actually have to devote to this? Was it 40 hours a week kind of thing?
Joe started off
50 hours a week. I actually timed it.
That's a lot, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Greg, how about you? I guess.
I would say for me, it depended a lot on the time of year. So this hit right about the time I was in grad school. So there would be times when I couldn't do very little. And then there were other times, particularly there were like a month or so in the summer where our lab really kind of went on vacation. And I probably worked, I don't know, like $80 a week, particularly if it was before our interactive, where we used to do an interactive for 80 people that was tailored to those 80 people. So that took like a month of full-time effort to write.
Oh, man.
Wow.
That's a lot. Yeah. Vernon, how about you?
Oh, Lord. It varied for me. As the point of contact, like Greg and Joe, I was constantly answering emails and chiming online. And if anybody read one of my posts on Yahoo, they would easily see why I would write like a full page of box text in an adventure. I was not known for brevity. But I believe that by providing lengthy and thorough explanations, that would help people, understand what was going on. Turns out it just prompted more questions. So I created my own hell, but hey, at least I was familiar with the place. Yeah, it varied like Greg, but like Greg said, but I would say it was easily 40 to 50 hours a week. Now, a lot of that is responding to player questions, not just on the Yahoo groups, but private emails that you get. It's fulfilling requests for adventures. The POC was responsible for distributing adventures to people who requested them if they didn't get them from the WotC website.
Right.
We had tons of adventures in the pipeline. We had the meta orgs that we were working on. Verbabank did this crazy thing and let people create their own towns in the campaign.
And
So
we
you
see
can
them.
imagine the
That
headache
was a
that
great thing.
We see
that
them on
creates-
Anna's map this
I
day.
was going to say, and I
Oh, yeah.
filtered out half of them because I didn't feel they belong. So I've been kind of a bit ruthless when it comes. I haven't.
I know I mentioned earlier, Verbabont looks like an air traffic control map with, if you look
Yeah.
at all the towns and the lines there. I mean, you would think we were like had 20 times the number of people that we had. It's like a
Yep.
town every 5 feet.
That's
Yep.
cool, though. It's
Yep, I've
But
taken
it
most
was-
of
it
them
was a
away,
lot of
but
fun.
put some of them in there. Yep.
But,
JP,
yeah,
it's a great. It's so fantastic, Vernon, that you had that dedication. Everyone's making towns up, though. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, we I mean, yeah, it's like the guys, it's about 40 to 50 hours.
Okay.
As POC, similar to what these guys were doing, was a lot of responding to email, keeping up a website, keeping up the Yahoo group, keeping everybody involved. In my case, like in Tusmet, one of the big things about it is that Tusmet is very French speaking, but we had a lot of English only people that came to play with us. So we had to make sure that everything I basically had to do it a lot of that in double. Then when I came over, really step over on the adventure side of that, I would produce the adventures all in English and then would have the box text just translated to French. So that was an extra time. When I went to, to the county of Vernside, I thought I was going to get all this extra time, but no. I mean, you had, plan conventions, make sure the slot zeros. That's something that's really
slot zeros.
The slot zeros were both. They're both we could talk about those later, but
Well,
plan
you might
those,
explain to
those.
folks what a slot zero is.
Please.
A slot zero is before a large convention. You would run the adventure for the GMs. The reason is that, unlike later campaigns in Living Greyhawk, if you ran the mod and you burnt it, you could not get credit for it. So all the GMs wanted to play the games and then run them. So, I haven't run it. I haven't played it. I don't want to, lose my chance at a cert. So, you had to do that. And that was a lot of time and, make sure everybody would show up, make sure we have a venue, make sure that everybody had characters that were, within the level. I mean, it's,
wow.
It was a lot of organization for that, and then to get to the show itself. I mean, so instead of just having the adventure written, you had to have the adventure written in time for the slot zeros. And then, I mean, yeah.
Crazy.
To be fair, they weren't always really finished by the time the slot zero hit.
Nah, there was a lot of time when the ink was still drying.
They were more like suggestions than adventures.
But we did have to, it was not just, you just write the adventure and you run them and then let whatever happen. There was a selection by the circle, which we'll get, I'm sure we'll get down the road too. But I mean, just getting the adventure written, was it not just me going, oh, okay, yeah, I like this. This looks good. Let it run. No, there were some people above us who made sure that all this craziness was more or less contained.
Don't forget the play test thing.
The play test was also one of those. I mean, but not everybody did the play tests, though. We tried to, but not everybody.
Playtest was a luxury that we couldn't always afford.
I think in the BK we had success with using the playtest to target the first round of judges. So it would essentially be our slot zero.
We often try and do that as well. I mean, because a lot of the guys who were very much into it were also typically the people who were willing to judge. So, we're like, yeah, you guys are willing to play test this? Well, we're going to play test this. And then we're going to see, hey, run it for us, please.
Casey, what do you think, man? Were you in that 40-hour range as well?
I hesitate to say yes because I feel like that might either be too much on some weeks or way too little on some weeks. It varied.
Yeah.
There were crunch times. We did about 4 to 8 interactives a year, and those could certainly eat up a lot of time. And I think Britt and I in particular, and Susan and Theo and the others who worked around the 5th year, 6th year of the campaign, we got really efficient with our time and saying the things that are not being published to a wide audience, interactives, not being reviewed by the RPGA, these could be skeleton when we write them, very bare bones, and then we would run the slot zeros and play tests, and the way we ran them kind of informed the judges of, play the NPC this way. So we didn't write, say, a page of box text for those events, but we certainly would for other adventures. And then again, answering questions online from people. Yeah, that took a lot of time. We had an online in-character board in the BK that I spent a lot of time monitoring, and we told people, if you do something on this in-character board and it gets our attention, we reserve the right to react to it in character in the future. And so we didn't want to get obsessed with that. We're not World of Warcraft. We didn't want to be online 24/7 monitoring people. But there was 1 or 2 events where we were like, all right, we're going to kill this character the next chance we get because of what he just did on our in-character board. And so that would also create a time sink for us to monitor. And we killed the hell out of that character too. We turned him into glass, and then we shattered him.
Well, that
He was like a
sucks.
15th or 17th level wizard. Yeah,
Crystal
it was
brittle.
pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bill, if you're around, I'm not going to apologize for that one. I think that was Theo's doing.
That's the Bandit Kingdoms.
Oh, my
That's
God.
awesome. Well,
Jay,
go for it.
Guntaka brought up a question in chat a few minutes ago that I kind of want to address.
Sure.
And they, I'm sorry, you guys said who the White Griffin was. I forgot who it was.
That's me, Vernon.
Oh, okay, Vernon. So Vernon responded to it, and I kind of want to expound on what Vernon said. Guntaka asked, "What about the Living Greyhawk journals and the Living Greyhawk journal things in Dragon and Dungeon magazines? Was that not based on feedback from the triads, or was that just flavor for the effort?" A lot of times there were like backdrop articles and things like that would have like Paladins of Greyhawk and such like that had expository stuff for the setting. And the Living Greyhawk Journal, for those who may not have ever seen it, came in kind of 2 forms. Technically the first 6 issues, because it was 0 through 5 at the beginning of the campaign, were a standalone magazine and looked something like this.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was
the map of Greyhawk in one of them.
Yes.
we lost your sound, I think, Christoph.
Yeah, you muted yourself.
Yeah, actually, I was
Oh.
pushing the button on accident. And matter of fact, there is the map of Greyhawk itself.
Whose map is that? Is that who did it?
That's Dennis Tetro.
Oh, it's Malden's
Yeah.
map. Oh, great.
Yep,
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Dennis
Beautiful.
Petro, known as Malden. He runs melcot.com.
Awesome.
And then after that, the magazine moved into like the back of Dragon magazine.
I remember that.
And you can see like way down there at the bottom that it says Living Greyhawk. But one of the things is in a lot of the major content like that, like the Paladins of Greyhawk articles or the towns or cities or whatever, those weren't exactly like based on the campaign. They were more written for the people in the campaign to use, but they weren't from feedback. But in the months, every month when it was published, there would be blurbs from what was going on in each region. And so there would be like a dozen different little, 2 or 3 paragraph blurbs from each region around the country. And it would tell you what their current storyline was or what their newest release adventure was, or it would give you like a few plots and rumors and things like that about what was going on.
Whose brainchild was Living Greyhawk, and who was the Grand Overseer?
Eric Mona.
Okay.
Yes.
Eric was first.
Excellent. We are trying to get Eric on this show, guys. So
Yep.
So we're making that attempt.
Yes.
So
Yep.
to
We
have
might
him on.
get him.
Hopefully.
Yep, we might get him on. Yep.
Was SRM also as early as Eric? I've lost track of my early history.
No.
Some of you may know.
No.
He
So
wasn't as early.
yeah, Living Greyhawk would not have existed without Eric. He had such a passion
Great.
for Greyhawk, and he lifted it up on his shoulders, and then the other. So someone mentioned the Circle earlier. The Circle were the administrators of the entire campaign. So we ran our regions, but we reported to administrators who ran the entire thing, and that began with Eric, and then he left, and other people took over, and so there was processes in place to make sure we didn't go crazy, because even at the beginning we listed our tenure. Like, I was not even in the first 5 triad for divers. I think I was number 9 or something, so you had sometimes a lot of turnover, and people would take it in different directions, and there had to be a stabilizing force there to keep people in check. So we reported to people above us as well.
Wow.
I think I was the 13th for the BK looking at my list. Now, granted, there's 3 roles, not just 1 role, but
wow.
I mean,
I don't know how many Verbabank had, but I know I was one of the longest, if not the longest serving triad member for our region, just because after about a year and a half, people would just get burnt out and leave, because it was a very taxing responsibility, being responsible for all the adventures and responding to players and all of the minutia and administrivia that goes into running a campaign of this size.
Yeah, and let's not forget.
Yeah.
I mean, people are very passionate about it. So even though we're going to talk a lot about the good stuff, I mean, I could pretty surely, I've heard everybody's name there, and there has been abuse directed at all of the, at all these people at some point. Oh, I don't like, I'm guilty of that. I don't like Greg's Marks mod because his mods are always like super tough and freaking white dragon that's really a red albino red dragon. I remember that red dragon, Greg.
Ask me about the uproar when we ask me about the uproar when we gave hammocks to the gnarly rangers as a meta org benefit. You would have thought we were sacrificing children.
Hammocks? You mean like sleeping
hammocks.
Ask me about the time we sacrificed a child and someone threatened my life. So
well,
tit for tat.
Asked me to write a mod about torture, and then it was banned in Australia after I was told to write it.
Wow.
So I
literally banned
Dingoes ate your baby.
I imagine this went a lot of that. Because of the size, you can't please everyone 100% of the time, right? So that kind of happened everywhere. But do we all agree? Do you all agree it was a fantastic experience? I'm saying it's going to be 100% yes, correct? That you would love. Yeah.
And largely because it was a work of passion. Everybody here loved Greyhawk, and that's why they were doing it, and they loved the campaign, and they loved the living nature of it, and there's a lot of really great memories that go back all those years.
It really was
Living Greyhawk.
Go ahead.
Sorry, JP. Living Greyhawk got me back into playing Dungeons and Dragons. Obviously, it was specifically 3rd edition at that time, and then 3.x. But I myself was in the Army from like 98 to 2000 and didn't really find a group to play with. And then I got out and I started playing Living Greyhawk in Bryan College Station, Texas, sometime around 2002. I was working in a bookstore, and some people came in to purchase the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer, and I was like, "Oh, what's that you're buying?" And they told me like, "Hey, look, here's this book. It's set on Greyhawk. If you know what that is." I was like, "Of course I know what that is. I'm an old nerd. I grew up playing Greyhawk, Dungeons and Dragons." So they told me what Living Greyhawk was. I got out and met some of the local players. Was immediately hooked with the concept that I could take my character anywhere. I didn't have to have one dungeon master and one stable group of players, because as we've all experienced, people go to school, they get married, they have children, they have real life happen. And so Living Greyhawk allowed me to play whenever I had the time to play. And that got me back into gaming. And I haven't really quit gaming since then, even though Living Greyhawk died in 2008.
And then you became a triad, and all of that free time you had went away.
Let's have
good point.
Let's have that answer to all of the rest of you, how you got into Living Greyhawk. That was a great thing that Casey said, how he got into it. JP, how'd you get into it?
Well, quite frankly, I used to run like some small time convention in Montreal, and this one guy comes over and says, "Hey, I could run some games," and a little bit like Casey. I mean, the '90s, I quit D&D. I didn't like the games. I had, to me, there was so many other good games out there. I mean, the whole World of Darkness came out. I remember at the time going, "What? I can build a character that starts out rich? Yes, yes! I'm not just doing this for the cash." So it kind of, I kind of left, and I kind of came back, and I saw guys playing with miniatures. I'd become a miniatures guys in the meantime. So I'm like, "Oh, you guys are playing with minis," and again, they're playing Living Greyhawk, and so, well, I want in. And so from there, I mean, within a couple of months, I was pretty, I was applying to be Triad, which I didn't expect to do, but yeah.
Excellent. And that was right at the beginning, 2000, what, 2002? 1?
In my case, it was 2000, late 2002, 2003.
Okay.
I mean, the TUSMIT took a year before it actually formed, so I'm kind of like at the end of that first year of TUSMIT existing, joining.
Excellent. Greg, how about you?
So I had played a little Living City, which came before Living Greyhawk. So it's a similar campaign-ish, but took place in Forgotten Realms. And I had gotten out of it. I got a little disillusioned with that campaign and hadn't played any of the RPGA stuff for a while. And I saw a friend of mine's like, "Hey, I heard about this Greyhawk thing. They're starting a new thing. It's apparently like City. We should go to Gen Con and play." And I'm from Milwaukee, so it was very easy to just, all right, let's just go down to Gen Con and check it out. And I went there. I played some games. I found out that there was a region called High Folk that was Wisconsin. And they had a contest before their first convention to write some of their meta orgs, so I did. I'm like, here, I'm going to submit a few, and a couple of mine got accepted. And that turned into, I saw some things that happened there that made me, I saw things players had done, and I thought it was screaming for an adventure. So I submitted an adventure idea like within like 2 weeks after that first con. And they're like, "That's awesome. We needed something like that. That's going to be for our next con. Can you write it in like the next 3 months?" And so I turned it in like a month later. And then I got a conversation, "Can you come down to this bar?" And so I did, because this is how we do things in Wisconsin. We meet at a bar. And yep, there we go. It's funny, that Casey, I almost put on my BK shirt.
You guys are trading shirts like
Yeah,
soccer players.
Always.
Yeah.
But anyway, at the
You're right.
bar, I get
Nice.
there, and it's the 3 current Triad members. So the very first Triad member had passed away, but it's the 3 current. And one of them says, "You can't tell anyone, but I've been tapped to be the first person to move up to the circle. And so we've only have one convention, and we're already losing one of our people. And we need another Triad member. Could you basically step in, and we'll announce it at the end of the next con?" So basically, we were 2 cons in, maybe 4 or 5 months at the most, and I was already going to be a Triad member. I'm already working on what turned into the biggest series that lasted basically 8 years of our region, like the biggest thread of our region.
Awesome. Joe, how about
I
you?
got to play
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Casey.
with Greg. That's where I got the T-shirt. Sorry, I just wanted to jump in.
No,
there,
that's
'cause
great,
it's
man.
been-
I'm
when was
great that
that?
you guys all played.
2005 or 6 or something like that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a great time playing those High Folk mods, and I think we were play testing. I used Meta Regional Adventures for Chris Tulloch, so I've kept that shirt. I don't let the cats, sleep on it or anything.
That shirt is in great shape.
Yeah,
Most-
Yeah.
It's better than my diver shirts. Those things are falling apart.
Oh yeah, okay.
being chaotic rogues is kind of a thing between our 2 regions. Our people just had pointy ears.
Joe, how
So
about
for
you?
me, my home campaign, me and the other guy who ran it were also business partners, and that led real life drama to get into the game, and everything kind of fell apart. So a college friend of mine said, "Well, you need to come with me to Kansas City, because there's this thing called Living Greyhawk that you're going to love. I love it, and I want you to get into it." And I'd never been to a gaming convention before. I had all the stereotypical expectations of what I was going to find there. And we showed up, and for those who haven't played this, we've used the phrase interactive a lot. We published printed adventures that everyone could play. They could get a group and play on their own. They didn't have to have oversight or anything. They got it and they ran it. But we also had events that were custom made for gaming conventions. They rarely would be played at other events. Some regions played with that, but it was usually too hard. And this would be, rather than having a table of 6 players and a DM, you would have however many people you have in the interactive, 45, 100, however many, all participating at their relative tables that were part of a larger event. So it wasn't just, hey, what's the average result of this table? So I show up and there's an interactive, and it's basically the Divers Thieves Guild. It's called the Alliance. And they had a little bit of LARPing, like everyone that was going to introduce you into your relative area of the interactive was an NPC, and they would start talking to you, and you, if you wanted to get into the Alliance, you would start actually just talking subtext, and there was this whole thing, and that would determine which tables you got to. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. And the guy in front of me in line is one of my best friends to this day. His name is Andy McCullough. He's an engineer who had way too much disposable money. And so he had just started at the same time, and we're coming into this 2.5 years late. And he goes, I want to catch up as quickly as possible. I'm going to have 30 people come to my house every month, and we're just going to play everything that we've missed. And so every month I would drive out to Kansas City, and you'd have these little mini cons in this guy's house. And it just became... I would call it an obsession. It's the only way you can put this many hours into something that doesn't pay you. But you meet so many cool people, and you have so many stories. And then you'd need the Sunday afterward just to tell the stories that they were at the table about, because everyone was just so euphoric. And yeah, how do you quit something like that?
You don't.
Exactly. It ends, and then you go away and cry.
It quit us.
Yeah.
Every con I go to, so I'm still active running organized play. And every con I go to, there's at least one night where people get around and all they do is share Greyhawk stories.
And that's the camaraderie. That's awesome.
Yeah. 12 years and we're still doing it.
So, Vernon, how about you?
Oh man. I'm kind of an old guy. I grew up with Greyhawk back in the 70s. So we played I grew up with first edition, and played the Temple of Elemental Evil like 48 times, and Village of Hamlet, and all of the Giants and the Drow series. And so I've kind of been steeped in Greyhawk, so to speak, for a while. And like many people, when I got into Forgotten Realms and then kind of fell away with towards the end of second edition. So when third edition was coming around, it kind of, grabbed my interest again, especially when I started seeing some of the previews of the mechanics and everything. I'm like, oh, this looks cool. It's customizable with the feats and stuff. What could go wrong? So I didn't make the Gen Con where Living Greyhawk was released, but I think that was 2001 is the one I got to. So I kind of got in a little bit early on and played some of the core adventures, which are adventures that are not set in a specific region. And then, oh great, I found out we can play this stuff back in our area and in Illinois, in my area. And so I tried to find some adventures, and of course Illinois is Chicago and not Chicago. And so I lived in the not Chicago part. And so adventures were kind of thin on the ground in terms of finding these things. So I kind of got together with some friends of mine and started organizing some play in Springfield, Illinois, where I was living at the time. And we coordinated with Champaign and Bloomington, and we even formed our little group with a clever name, CIRCA, Central Illinois Role-Playing Combatants Alliance, which sounded really grandiose, and it was a lot of fun. I met some great friends who are still friends of mine to this day. And so that's kind of how I got it. Yeah, I met Joe, exactly. And so that's kind of how I got involved in the campaign at the beginning of that. And then because, nothing is so much fun that you can't over volunteer yourself for it and then burn yourself out. I started pestering people. Hey, is there anything I could do to help out? And there was the triad for Verbabank at the time, and then they had this group of volunteers called the Verbabank Council, which was a great way of organizing some people to help out and do things. And so I kind of got invited to be a part of that and started contributing some stuff. Hey, I worked a little bit on some of the meta orgs and I continued to get Circa going, and then just kind of everything kind of mushroomed from that. Living Greyhawk was a campaign that, and a friend of mine, Michael Menza, put it the best in that you got out of it what you put into it. So if you didn't put a lot into it, you didn't get much out of it. But the more you contributed, the more you became a part of it. It's like there was this multiplier effect, like when you take, drugs and alcohol, and it just grew, and everything started, you started getting more out of it yourself, and you wanted to do more for the campaign in the region because you could see the faces of the people who were benefiting from your efforts. And yeah, there was a lot of griping, and there was a lot of that on the Yahoo groups, but at the conventions themselves, you actually got to see the faces of the people and talk to them and have fun with them and hear the stories like Greg was saying about what they were doing with the stuff that you created or you had a hand in. And so that just kept pulling me into being a part of it. It's just one of those things. Once you got your dime bag of Greyhawk, you kept coming back for more.
Yep.
And I use the drug metaphor, and that's jokey, but it's true that there was something like an adrenaline rush where the more you did with it, the more you wanted to do with it.
That is very true. That y'all are all of the things that y'all are saying, but especially what Vernon just said about you got out of it what you put into it, and it's interesting that we all were around Living Greyhawk in various times. I actually didn't come to the campaign. I started playing. I had played Greyhawk, way back when it was just the Greyhawk Adventures hardback Ornstein book. And I played during Wars and From the Ashes and stuff. And there was this new Greyhawk book that came out, and I didn't even understand why it was Living Greyhawk, because I had never played convention games or anything like that. And there was a page in the back of the book, and it said, "What is Living Greyhawk?" And it said, "Contact your local triad," and it had all this information. And I never looked at that page. I never knew what it meant or understood why it was. And then I moved. I moved from Athens, Texas to, I guess I was moving to Houston, Texas at the time. And I looked up online, and things were starting to get popular online, like meetup.com. And, like Vernon, you mentioned Circa, there was a local group in the Houston area. And then when I moved to the DFW area, anyway, I played the last 3 years of the campaign. But that whole addiction sort of thing that you get out of it, what you put into it, that is what led me to running Greyhawk Online now and publishing the North Journal, is that I didn't have that fix anymore, and I still wanted some kind of outlet to continue contributing to the campaign or to the game or whatever. And so here I am, still, whatever it is, 12 years later after the campaign, and now I'm back to a point where I'm publishing a quarterly magazine because I still want to do the 40 hours a week in Greyhawk.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think a lot of the campaigns that came afterwards grew up on that. And one of the things that I think I personally did not feel as much was the closeness to the triad. So whenever I went to Iowa, Joe was there. So I had a face. I could go ahead and complain, "Joe, these mods are terrible." After that,
all right, he wasn't playing mine. It's okay.
No, they're not yours. But there was a face there. There was somebody I could go ahead and talk to and have feedback from. Whereas in modern in later campaigns, it's a mailbox or it's a forum or it's some place where I don't get somebody to tell me, "All right, we got this. We heard you. You're good." I use this metaphor, but yeah, I was a lot of. I received a lot of it from say many of my unpopular opinions, which 12 years later I can agree many of them were. I was still in the right.
Of course.
Triad members were always right.
Yeah. Even when we were disagreeing with other Triad members.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's all rose-colored glasses now, but we weren't just having to deal with blowback from players. I mean,
oh yeah,
I was a young man with a big temper, and I did not hesitate to tell people where they could shove it. Yeah, I had an infamous temper. And
you hit it well.
And I don't think people understand how much the triads we interacted through the Yahoo groups. We had a specific triad only Yahoo group where we could discuss the rules that the circle was handing down to us, or convention ideas, but we used a lot of it to just bitch at each other for like, I can't believe you gave out access to a +5 Vorpal Holy Sword without making them pay for it. The damn Sheldamar Valley is just full of cheese.
So, and that's one of the big challenges of having a geographic game is if I want to play in Verbabank, I live in St. Louis City. Illinois is 15 minutes away from me. So I can go over there with all my divers, whatever. Turns out we were actually really poor, so we were always behind the curve. And so people would like come up from Yeomanry and they'd be like, oh, this is your challenge? I murder it in one with this spear that I got.
Oh my God.
So then I would go on, I'm like, why the F are you giving them this spear? And like, it was an interactive reward. I don't care. Go stick it up your ass. And so it was.
I do remember you saying that, yes.
Yeah, it's trying to get everyone to you're focused on your region, but you want kind of everyone to work cooperatively to kind of make everything better, but their vision didn't necessarily align with yours. So plenty of friction.
Everyone has a different version of balance, of game balance.
Yeah.
How much
and
was
mine is the right one.
Yeah.
Anna,
how much was the central kind of how much authority did you have over story and stuff like that? Was that like strict guidelines saying you have to be within each region?
Oh, no, we had free reign.
Yeah.
Well, with some exceptions.
With some exceptions.
Like you have to set in your region unless you're working cooperatively with another. So you would have crossovers.
Casey!
You could not use Greyhawk.
Our crossover,
which was very difficult for a city whose main rival is Greyhawk. And then it wasn't so much the story as it was the rewards. Rewards were heavily reviewed sometimes.
Yes.
There
was a book, whether or not we paid close attention to it. Sheldamar Valley.
So in terms of content, and this is one of the things I loved about being from Divers is the difference between Verbabank. I actually got kicked out of my very first Verbabank adventure because you're supposed to say that you want to be a hero, and my first words were, "How much are you going to pay me?" Which turned out automatically ended the adventure.
Which one was that? Was that one I wrote?
No, it was like year one. You had to be up on stage and you're talking to someone. Yeah. So in my region, if you didn't ask how much are you going to get paid, you often made no money from the adventure.
Right.
Because it's your responsibility.
Same in the BK.
Yeah. So we played heavily with the black and white and fields of gray, because lots of moral questions of, if you live in a world where you can bring people back from the dead, is murder actually wrong? So that's where I came from. And so like I wasn't joking. We actually had an adventure where someone wanted to assassinate a noble's baby. And obviously you don't want that to happen, right? No one wants to kill a baby, except as writers, we don't make that choice. We let the players make that choice. And 5 of them did. And 5 of them lost their character. Well, 4 lost their characters and 1 became a fallen paladin.
That's I'm sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, but if you take...
That's a good point to jump in real quick about pulling characters, but sorry.
Yeah, so just to wrap up, that experience it was not even questioned. Like they didn't come and say, "Are you really killing a baby?" And because the answer is, "I'm not," is the player's choice, right? But you would never see that in Verberbonk. Like you go to Verberbonk and they're like, "Hey, there's this baby," and I'm like, "I'm going to kill it." They'd be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm from a different place."
Wow.
I'm from out of town.
One of the things is I think everybody's really clearly seeing in response to Anna's question. Each region had a very, very specific flavor, and especially ones that were very notably different. Like Divers had a very, very specific contention with Greyhawk, and the Bandit Kingdoms were very specifically, bandits.
AIUs.
But the one of the core of the game that Joe actually just mentioned passingly there for a second is that we were supposed to be the heroes. And in Living Greyhawk, much because of the fact that we all know how it eventually ends up, and what always ends up happening at some point when you get mixed parties, the campaign did not allow evil characters. And you could technically occasionally commit an evil act that wouldn't immediately change your alignment. But the idea was that you were saying, my guy is a good guy and I'm going to play him.
Greg's shaking his head no. Do you want to hop in first?
Well, okay. This is from a player's perspective, but at any rate, so the important part is that if you committed evil acts, it would get noted on your sheet, and your character could be pulled out of the campaign if it changed your alignment.
I would say that it sort of was a little bit more flexible based on your region. So,
and that's very true. Yes, absolutely. Each region was different.
Clearly, BK, Divers, High Folk, like our theme was very much like we started out a little bit on the good side, but we were very quickly went down an anti-hero path.
Really?
I mean, our were very much like IUs is in our backyard. We literally will do anything.
Right.
I mean, anything.
He was in our living room.
Yeah. I mean, you have that advantage. We were better than you at keeping him out. It's just, because we're elves, we last longer. But there was a definite way to make that more flexible.
Yes,
we tried to turn those acts against the players, like make them fight each other. And sometimes you would get away with things. Like there were a few evil characters in the campaign, sort of. One of the things we got away with was asserted evil character, but also letting people turn evil. You can now no longer play your character unless it's an interactive, and then you can be an NPC where you play your character.
Well, that's another thing that often happened was that that the authors characters would kind of get promoted to almost a hero status. That, they got retired, put in a special shelf, and then the character would get to come back out on special occasions.
Yeah, we called it retiring into story.
Yeah, it's a Greyhawk tradition dating back to the founders and Gygax and the rest of them, that their PCs are in the book, Mel Sassadero or Bigby and all the rest of those named characters.
Circle.
So,
yeah,
absolutely. And then, so in Living Greyhawk, retirement level was originally 18th, and then they lowered it down to 16 because high level play in 3rd edition is bonkers. I think it should have been semi-retirement at like 12th or 13th, and then maybe special interactives. But as Wade Christoph says, we had a PC retire, and he was a baron. He had a noble title. We had other PCs who retired. Susan Threadgill was a triad member, and her character, not because she was a triad member, but because she had done such an amazing job as a player for 8 years or 6 years, her character appeared as an NPC in the background of one of my adventures. I killed her PC off stage, and she was okay with that, but the players had to go and rescue her body. But I think it's a tradition. I bet my colleagues from the other regions had a couple of retired characters show up in adventures. Is that right, guys?
We had, for Divers, there had been renown with the Alliance you'd been earning from the beginning, and it turns out they had started throwing in those favors without a strategy of what they were going to do with them. So they'd been building up for years, and what we ended up doing was when someone had X number, they could cash them in. And I did one-on-one adventures with them over instant messenger, because this was pre-Skype kind of thing. And it wasn't the outcome wasn't guaranteed, but they had to kind of state what they wanted to, like, do you want to try to become guild master of this guild within the alliance, or do you want, like, someone's like, oh well, we had a lot of tragedies after a certain big interactive, and so there were open seats, and someone's like, well, I want to become a lord, and like, okay, well, this is Divers, it's not just going to be that easy, right? And so lots of moral testing, lots of pushing the boundaries, but it was basically like a 5-hour solo adventure that was not pre-written. It was all ad hoc, and at the end they would often either achieve their goal or be dead, and the outcome was always, if you succeed at this, your character's gone. You can't play high level anything. You're giving me your character. And we had a noble of divers, we had 2 guild leaders, and it was all and then we had one person who, like, halfway through went, no, this is a horrible idea. I quit. I run away. So it wasn't like, because what I really didn't want to have happen was, oh yeah, all my friends are now nobles, ha ha ha, right? Like, I wanted it to be measured. Like, you had to have X number of favors, you had to have a stated goal, and then you had to survive my adventure that was meant to kill you, right? And then if you did that, you win.
That was one of the things that LG did have. That was you could have like the solo adventure, but you wanted your character to accomplish something.
Mm-hmm.
For example, one of my characters, one of the class was contemplative. Well, for that, you must have met a representative of your god. Well, I mean, I asked for a mission, and I got a special mission where I went. I'm a cleric of Corlon Larethian, so I met some Eladrin of Corlon, and that was pretty. I mean, I thought that was pretty cool, because I got like not only my own little cert, but hey, look, I got proof. See, I've done this. It's similar to what Joe did. In my case, I wasn't going to get killed, but I was planning not to get killed. But the idea was that you could get some of these missions to have some of the role-playing requirements for your characters. I always thought that was really fun, and I think we only refused one person because what they wanted was clearly out of scope. So, but that was still, I like that.
When the topic of special missions came up, I was about to ask. You said you'd only ever refused one of them. For the viewers and for those in chat, the campaign had basically had a mechanic that they called, quote unquote, special missions. And what it was like a lot of prestige classes, like Jay mentioned. You had a role playing requirement, or if you joined a meta organization, sometimes they had a role playing requirement, or sometimes it would just be something like, my character is 100 dead, and I want him to have to hunt down the body of his grandfather because his body was stolen, and he thinks he's a drowned zombie somewhere.
You could recover your dead friends too that way.
Yeah, that's another good use of them. And so often the players would submit to the triad and say, request a special mission. And if it were approved, they would then write like a brief one-person, one-on-one kind of mission, usually.
Or it could be a whole table.
I sort of say sometimes it would involve a small group. But so for those of you who are POCs and triad members and stuff like that, which is all of you guys, how often did y'all have special missions, and how many did you have overall, and did you often have to refuse them?
Well, I'll start with this one. Okay. We in Verbabank did not greenlight a lot of special missions, just because as we saw them, they were essentially custom adventures for either a single person or a small group of people. And with the amount of work we had, we just did not have the time to devote to writing what amounted to a single adventure that could only be played by 6 people. It's not that I didn't want to do it, it's that I didn't see a way for us to do it and still keep the other commitments that we had. Now there's an exception to that I want to make a note of. I mentioned the town project earlier. We had some residents of a town who actually wanted to do a special mission for the members of their town. It was I think it was Seneca Valley was the name of the town, and they were a bunch of Palorites lived there, and they wanted to do something special involving Palor and the members of the town. And I happened to find someone who was willing to write the adventure just for them. And this guy did a phenomenal job. I wish I could remember his name, but as fate would have it, this adventure was released in I believe August of 2007, just after the end of the campaign was announced. So what we ended up doing was we left it a special mission just for that town only. And then at the beginning of January, the year the campaign was supposed to end, we took out all the special goodies that were in there, made it a generic cert, so you just got golden experience points for it, and we opened it up to everyone. And I'm really happy with how that particular special mission turned out, because it captured everything I thought it should have. It captured flavor, the elements that all the original people wanted with it. It was customized to their taste. That's the one instance where I can remember us green lighting something and it worked exactly right. But we didn't have the time to do that for everybody. And I wish we could have, because a lot of people had some cool special mission ideas for what they wanted, but it was just finding the time to do it in and amidst everything else we had to do.
Casey.
And just to jump in real quick, and a lot of people had some really cheesy ideas. They, as Wade said, they just wanted to get access to a prestige class or some other twinked out ability, and so they had to ask the Triad for it. Oh, I want levels in the Super Demon Slayer Super Saiyan class. No, that doesn't fit our region, and it's using our resources and time. So people had great ideas and people had bad ideas, but I'm very curious to hear, like, from JP, Greg, and Joe, what their region did.
I ran I think 5 or 6, and all of those, every time the whole Triad sat down, reviewed it, and one of the things that we tried to do was use it to foreshadow. So hey, we'll give you a little bit of like, hey, this kind of thing is coming, and then let that player kind of, hey guys, I found this prophecy in there, whatever they was doing. I remember one of them wanted to meet like a prophecy. The other one wanted to investigate some other things. Surprisingly, at least for me, both in Tusmet and in the county of Ernst, I kind of expected there would be a lot more. Like, I know the Tusmet Triad, I think, wrote more special missions for me than for anybody else, because I was the one going, "Ooh, I could write some of that. That's awesome."
And you could play in one per year.
Yeah, I could play in one per year. So 2006, 2007, and 2008. I got 3.
Yeah.
Greg and Joe on this topic?
In High Folk, so we wrote a lot of them, but we tried to come up with ways to make it easier to deal with, because there were so many requests. Like the other guy said, everybody wanted a special mission. So in order to get around that, while we ran some sort of the normal way, we took a page from the Joff Triad and did a few of them online via email, things that were really simple, that could be just an exchange of a couple emails. We did a few that way.
That's not a bad idea.
But the other thing we did was, in High Folk, we had a unique situation. We had a convention called Conflict. And Conflict happened in a brewery and was 3 days long. And you would get there on the first day, having 2 months ago sent me your request of your special mission and everything about your character sheet, your background, everything. And we would write effectively a special mission for you and 79 other people. And I would write a story to make them all match. And we would put them all together, and you would run your first day. You would show up, you'd go in a private room with the Triad, and we would tell you the secret things that was about you. And then the next day, there would be a battle interactive, followed by a LARP, followed by more battle interactive.
Oh my gosh.
The next day, there would be a dungeon crawl, followed by an end, sort of like denouement, like everybody telling their secrets, explaining everything. And then all the special certs, 80 special certs, one for each person, having completed their special missions for the year, done.
Wow.
One shot.
Lot of tries with that.
Insane.
That is
Yeah.
insane.
I am
yeah.
jealous that I never got to participate in that.
It would sell
Yeah,
out
wow.
in like under a minute. Like
I mean, but it's kind of
they're
epic.
open
Yeah.
and it would be closed.
And that's one of the things is that sometimes some of these ideas you just didn't have the ideas. I mean, you just didn't think about it. You go, oh my God, this is so.
Yeah.
I love you, Greg. Now.
I made you suffer back in the day. I know.
Yes, I suffered quite a lot, but it's just sometimes you just didn't think about it, and then so a new triad would come in with some new ideas, and then it's like, oh, we could do all this, we could do it this way, and or you'd meet another triad and go, what, you guys are doing it that way?
Or your roommate would be on the circle, and I would just look at Britt, and I would be like, "I'm doing this, whether you say I can or can't." So,
Yeah.
Joe, how about
he
the
would
desert?
usually go, "All right, I like your attitude. Let's
One of
break
the-
some rules."
One of the things I wish we'd been able to do was to share more information like that. I mean, I live south of you guys, and I don't think I ever knew you did that, and I don't remember Michael or Brad or anyone else mentioning that that's how you did things.
Oh,
Greg.
Michael, I think Michael and Brad were there.
Oh, I'm sure they were. I mean, they lived up there. So, I mean, and it could be I just missed them talking about it, or I slept since then, or I had a Scotch hangover or something. But
Well, it has been 12 years.
I tried. Yeah, no kidding. But one of the things I wish we had been able to do really, and Joe kind of talked about this, alluded to it earlier, was I wish we'd been able to share more information so that while we could, we'd each run our regions the own way, but still kind of have similar themes. I mentioned the Verbabank Town project. When I sat down and revised the rules on that thing in 2005, and I had Joe edit them, and his reaction to them kind of made me think, well, there might be other regions that want to see this stuff, and they just don't know we're doing it. Because that was like 3/4 of the problem. What was that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I just want to jump in because that town project was amazing. We saw it in the BK. We wanted to use our own version of it and incorporate it. And I think we were running out of time with the campaign. So we truncated it and we came up with a slightly different system. But yeah, I think we could have all done a slightly better job of communicating these original ideas each region had earlier in the campaign. And
yeah,
I often felt like, as someone who became a triad member in like 2005, that sometimes the predecessors were a pinch myopic. The ones who came from Living City in particular had various experiences kind of burn them out, or they had learned not to ask for things because they got their hands slapped. But I think those of us who were later triad and administrators, we started seeing the circle relaxing because they knew the end was coming, I suspect. And we had a BK mercenaries. We allowed people to hire mercenaries during their adventures, and that's really something the entire campaign should have allowed, from the get-go. Sorry, Stella here wants to say hi.
Hi,
I was
Stella.
thinking, wasn't this the years? I was thinking when you said there was lack of communication, and I was thinking, wasn't this the years when Wizard of the Coast kind of slaughtered their forums? They didn't have a forum, and they kind of screwed up. To me, it would be kind of obvious for Wizard of the Coast to kind of have a central communication hub and a forum and all that for you to.
Yahoo was the backbone of LG.
Yeah.
Right, and there was a Yahoo group for all the triads to communicate, but sometimes you don't even know that there's a question that you can ask. That was half the thing is, I don't even know that this is an option, so I don't even know to ask the question, hey, who is someone doing it?
Well, so there was always a risk when you were sharing with other triad was, I think it was less, I don't want someone stealing my idea, and more, I don't want someone throwing a fit and getting my idea canceled. So
which happened.
Yeah. I was very fortunate in my relationship with Vernon because we saw the region creation and the story creation and really just kind of like the world creation that we wanted our players to exist in very similarly. So he and I could share a ton, and because our regions bordered each other geographically in game as well as real life, we could start to share things. Like we did start to, I think we actually might have finished it after I left. We had our own version of the town project that was completely derived from Vernon's efforts, because as soon as he said, what do you think about this? I said, I think this is genius. And so whether or not everyone else was interested or anything, it was good fortune because he and I had a similar viewpoint. If he had had some kind of asinine, hey, I want each player to be able to have their own castle, and that will give them like a free Griffin steed after 3 months, I would have just set his idea on fire, right? So there wasn't sharing, and I think part of that was because people wanted to be able to do what they thought was cool for their region, and they didn't want other people getting in the way. Or maybe we just didn't have the relationships. There was a lot of turnover,
Yeah.
and there was a lot, I don't want to say cliques necessarily, but a lot of us started as players together and then moved into administration together. So you had pre-existing friendships that were very clear in conversations. And so, yeah, I think it was almost hard to share, not just an
Yeah,
unwillingness.
I can see that.
One of the things that I think that, well, now we could see it with hindsight, but at the time, remember, we're working, we're full-time students. I was working full-time, and then working full LG time at the same time. I got 90 hours a week. I mean, I got to make sure my mods are written, that my authors are in line, that my GMs are in line, that my meta orgs are out. And now I have to go and start looking at what the other guys are doing.
Yeah.
And I mean, even though there's still 3 people, if you remember, everybody here said they were working about an extra 40 hours on LG a week, and there are 3 people on that triad.
Yeah.
So just getting the basic of what our job is done. I mean, I would have loved to have a town project, but now I have to administer it. Hey, that's not part of my priorities. It's great. And I remember actually looking at Vernon's stuff and going, oh, this is really cool. I don't have time to deal with this. I'll move on to the next thing. And then I know some of my players asked us about it. Hey, guys, could we build a town? Yeah, but then how are we going to administer it? And how, who's going to take the time for it? And how is that going to... So there's a lot of great ideas, like Greg's idea. If I'm totally jealous for that idea. I would have done that
I would have died writing that. I don't know how you did it. That's amazing.
I must jump in and say that I'm so in awe of all the stuff that you did administratively, because a lot of people who watch this who haven't organized things, and now my map project and all the stuff that comes with it and the Facebook group and all that, I can really start appreciating, because I spend a couple of hours a day going through email, going through all the stuff. And it's a lot of work behind this screen, so to speak, that people on the outside don't realize how much goes into it that you don't see on the outside. So there's and I can work on this full time, so I have that privilege. I don't have a day job, so that's the.
Anna, I wish we would have had your maps during LG, and I'll take the opportunity right now to tell you how ungodly phenomenal they are. Well,
the thing is, I couldn't have made them back then because the information wasn't there. But yeah,
skills.
It's thanks to a lot of all the maps that came from the triads and all that made it possible for me to nail down a lot of it. So it's actually because I got a chance, and also thankfully I got fed a lot of that stuff from not the early days, but the late days of living Greyhawk. I got fed a whole bunch of it, so to speak. So that way I got inside information from a whole bunch of from living Greyhawk. So people just emailed it and sent it to me. So sometimes I had no clue it was, but the word started to get out when my maps started to come out. And so it's thanks to a lot
in my head canon. Sorry, in my head canon, I'm the first one that threw LG stuff at Anna and was like, "Put it on your map." Yeah. It wasn't a request; it was a demand.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting that we're all talking about the about the town project, and the towns that were added in the BK, and even and all the little adventure names or whatever that eventually got fed to Anna, and that have now become part of her maps and stuff. And we, even though we all know, Anna's maps are fan work, there are so many people when they go looking for a Greyhawk map, you Google Greyhawk map, you're going to find Anna's work. And, so a lot of those places that, 12 years ago, we never considered would eventually work their way into almost canon. Now, if a town was mentioned in one adventure as almost a throwaway, it now appears on almost every map any fan makes because they use all of those previous resources. One of the other things I would like to mention is y'all are talking about communication. And we've all said now a couple of times, this is 12 years ago the campaign ended, let alone it began 8 years before that. I mean, the campaign started in 2000, 2001. We're talking 20 years ago. And so for we keep saying the Yahoo groups, right? Facebook did not exist when we started this. MySpace didn't exist. And the concept of what we're all doing right now in a Brady Bunch style square where all of us can just talk whenever we want. That
Your phone was a phone.
Yeah, exactly.
It didn't exist back then, and so nowadays, people can just Google it and find something, or they can just pop on a Facebook and say, "Hey, Casey, you coming to the meeting?" Or whatever. And back then,
but email was new and cool back then. That was the new thing.
Still, it's pretty key to what we did, though.
20 years ago, yeah.
All right, let me make a couple quick announcements for everyone who's watching, because I'm so happy the way this is just flowing. It's great. Number one, we're going to have everyone back. So this is not going to be the last time you ever see these guys again. We're going to do highlights of a lot of different Live in Greyhawk areas, maybe have one or two on. So don't worry. This will not be the last one. All right. So we're going to have everyone back. And because I know Doug wants to get involved too, and maybe a couple others, and maybe we'll finally get Eric on. Number two, Mike has been patiently waiting to ask a question. So Mike, you're going to go next. Number three, we'll talk about Anna's map next Wednesday's Legends and Lore, Geography and Classic Locations. I got it up. The 576 map is going to be highly discussed, guys and gals. Okay, just wanted to say that because it came up instead of at the end of the show. So that'll be next week. We're going to get into that into detail. Go, Mike.
Okay, so I just been patiently listening to you guys. This is amazing. You got my head spinning really on the administrative stuff. Like I couldn't do what you guys did. I used to run a fantasy hockey league for like 20 years, and that was just with like a dozen of us guys, and I finally got tired of that. So I don't know how you can run something statewide or multi-statewide.
Nice.
Yeah, Chris. Also, I dug my Shieldland shirt out.
Nice. Awesome.
A friend gave me
nice.
Oh, that's classic.
I don't know
And there goes Greg.
the story behind it.
T-shirt time.
Oh!
The shield.
Oh my
I'm
gosh!
sure
I
Jason
remember when
Bowman's
those.
in an alley, and that's where you got that from.
I remember when those came
Kept
out.
the BK shield.
Yep. I got this one because Chris Tulloch took it, and so I couldn't. And I had to pick some random shield from Europe or something, because of course the Europeans weren't there at Gen Con. And then Chris afterwards was like, "Here, I actually took this to give this to you." And it's actually on my wall just outside of where the camera can see. So I had to steal it.
Brilliant.
Nice.
I think that's the same event where Britt grabbed the BK shield. And I don't know if he's got it with him in Korea or not.
I should hope so. They're real functional shields.
So just to interject, Mike never actually got to ask this question.
Oh,
Yes.
dang it,
Yeah.
Joe.
Sorry, Mike.
I just had to flash
Sorry.
my backpack for Dainty. Sorry.
No, so I don't know if you already covered my question or not necessarily, but the main thing that was burning on my mind before I saw most of you guys come on was what was left undone. I assume most of you were with Live in Greyhawk when it was done. Was there anything still left in the planning stages that never saw play?
Great question.
Well, I'll start on this one. Lucky, we were able to finish and close off all of our stories, and right at the end, there was one NPC that we did not have a time to resolve just because time, and so it was basically it was like a murder mystery, like who's the mastermind. This is in the county of Ernst. Who's the mastermind that's been doing all this bad stuff? And so the campaign ended. We asked our players, we gave them like a month or to say, hey, which of the NPCs is the bird of Radagast? And I am happy to say that the bird of Radagast is flying free and has been giving some Hextorite loving to the rest of the Flyness. Hail Hextor!
Casey, how about you?
I'd like to jump in on this one.
Good.
I'm trying to remember when we found out that LG was going to end at the end of year 8. Maybe someone can refresh
Gen
my
Con.
memory on that. But
Gen Con 2007.
Yep.
okay,
When they announced 4E,
so we
they-
had. Okay, right, exactly, 4E. So we were not going to write a full set of adventures in year 8. I think we were limited to 4 or 6, depending on
6.
how much content we were writing, right? Okay. And that being said, we then immediately all had to brainstorm in our regions, what plot lines are we going to wrap up? Which NPCs are we going to wrap up? And in the BK, Mike, one of the things we had mapped out, we just couldn't get that adventure done in time. I think we were allowed to write new adventures and release them through the end of June instead of through the end of the year, if I remember correctly. But then they could be played through the end of the year, but it was no releasing in July. So we had mapped out 4 adventures, and I think some of them maybe have been double mods, 2-round scenarios. But
right?
the one that we did not... Yeah, thank you, Mike. I'll send you $5 after the show for the plug. But one we had in mind was an adventure called Brute Cold Force, where the PCs, all the high-level PCs of the Bandit Kingdoms, were basically going to be infiltrating Kranzer's tower and be shape-changed into demons. I think that was the one that we never got to actually write. I actually have to look at my book to refresh my own memory on this one, but I'm sure the other regions all had one as well, where they're like, they just probably weren't able to get to one of the ones they wanted to do.
Anyone else want to take up that question?
In High Folk, we actually got really lucky because we sort of, I think maybe I had some inside pool because I sort of knew roughly that 3-year arc was coming to an end. So we planned almost accordingly. And then when the announcement came, it was, I think, the Origins 2007 where we were really talking about it. And I got lucky because I think Casey wasn't there, but Britt was. And Britt was talking to me outside the play area, and he's like, I don't know what our big end arc should be for both the meta region for IUs as well as for the core. And I said, have I got an ending for you? And I took all of our stuff that we weren't going to get to finish, and I shoved it onto Britt's plate and said, here you go. They're going to wrap up. High Folk will get to here, then IUs will get to the next step, and then the core will get to the end, and all of my story is done.
So that's why I had to be... Okay, that makes a lot of dang sense.
Like, Britt,
I hate you again, Greg Marks.
and Britt never codified the results of the core finale of whether or not IUs was successful in becoming a more powerful god. Britt lived with me here in Boston when I was going into grad school for a year, and I used to bug the shit out of him and working on my book. You know, what was the result? And he said, I'm not going to tell you because I'm not going to decide it. Not enough judges had sent back Britt the results, the table results, for him to feel like that there was an official result. Just kept saying, dude, you're just going to have to go with your gut instinct based on how the adventure ran and what you saw. And Britt just washed his hands of it
Just
at that
go
point.
with 3 out of 5.
He just didn't want to make that decision. So but in my headcanon, you know, IUs had a partial success.
Your headcanon's an interesting place.
Yeah.
Nice.
For divers. So Greg mentioned this.
I want IUs to be less of a clown.
I understand what he means.
When Greg mentioned a 3-year arc, so LG was 8 years. There was originally an inception of a 5-year arc. So we were going to have our first big climax at the regional level after 5 years. And then at the time, the presumption was probably another 5 years, etc. For divers, I came in at year 4. We had our starting triad who would all quit after the first year. For reasons I wasn't here yet, so I don't know the real story. And then we had some shuffling, and then we had a couple key people come in who had a very different interpretation of Greyhawk than I did. And so you started seeing adventures where it's like, wait, are we just playing Underworld, the movie, turned into
Oh my God.
yeah, so they really like the cheese aspect of early Greyhawk, and they took it to the next level. And so when we got to the end of year 4 and I came on to kind of finish the year out, I said, where the hell is the how are we going to finish the 5-year plot? And the guys that were already there said, oh, we gave up on that. We have no 5-year plot. And I'm like, well, that's not going to happen because that's what I've been waiting for this entire time. So we got, what was it, 14 adventures a year? I can't even remember.
We got 8, and if you got all 8 done, you got a bonus 9.
9.
Yep.
All right.
Right.
So 8 of the 9 of our year 5 adventures I wrote, and they are all one meta adventure. So I created the 5-year plot point as kind of just one big ass year adventure to make up for everything that had come before. And then we pivoted that. I'm like, well, I don't want this to happen again. So we immediately introduced the next plot line, except if you look in the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer, which is one of my favorite D&D resources regardless of setting,
Absolutely.
Divers has very small amounts about it. It was an afterthought location that Eric Mona thought was a joke, and we kind of took the things he thought was funny and embraced them wholeheartedly. Except the thing that we're most notable for is our rivalry with Greyhawk, which we're not allowed to use. So the only other 2 things that are mentioned are Turashmak and the remains of the Temple of Elemental Evil. And so we didn't have to abandon a story. We pivoted from our year 5 climax into an invasion by Turashmak. And when that was finished, we were pivoting again to the Oerth Dragon. And rather than not being able to finish a story, we had to change the outcome. So I actually wrote the series, the regional interactive conclusion battle, and flew back from Boston to Kansas City to was it Kansas City? Anyway, to do this whole thing. And we defeated the Earth Dragon. Yay. That was actually not the original intent. The intent in the original arc was we were going to lose. And then like the premise was simply the good guys don't always win. Right. And what if we started working from a place where the bad guys had actually won? Because you're not really a city that the rest of the Flyness really gives a shit about. Right. You're already seen as kind of the bad guys anyway. So it's not like you can just expect Greyhawk to run in on their silver steeds and rescue you. So what happens when you're the less bad guys in a bad place? And instead we just won.
What year was that?
That was 2008. That was how we ended the region.
I feel like these guys can confirm original Living Greyhawk, all the regions planned for 5-year plot arcs. And then in 2005, the Circle members said, hey guys, your next plot arc should be 3 years because 5 years was too long. But in reality, they knew 4th edition was being worked on because they were probably playtesting it or had heard about it. And the RPGA kind of gave that heads up, like your next plot arc should be 3 years. And just a real final jump in before I cede my time is, with so many Triad members coming and going, it was a lot like J.J. Abrams and Ryan Johnson. You know, previous authors would write stuff that would be silly to later Triad members. We actually retconned an entire adventure because it was clearly meant to be set in the Forgotten Realms. Didn't make any sense whatsoever in the Bandit Kingdoms. But for whatever reason, the early Triad had commissioned this piece and had published it for the BK. I suspect there's similar things that happened in all the regions due to Triad turnover, where you just said, hell no, that plot and story don't make any sense. We're not even doing anything with it anymore.
So, unlimited power.
Sure,
Vernon, do you want to finish up on this, and then we want to do your tribute?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we were sorry, like Casey said, we were kind of given a heads up that we had about 3 years to go. I don't remember it being as explicit as he said, but we knew we didn't have a lot of time. So we fashioned a I wanted a Michael and the other Triad members and we decided that we kind of wanted to do a single arc over the 3 years where all of the adventures were tied together. A lot of regions kind of had one-off adventures, and Verbabank had a large number of them in the first 5 years that they didn't really play into the overall plot line. But we wanted to tie a single 3-year arc together. So when the end of the campaign came, we knew where we had to get to, and it was just a matter of getting there. There were a number of elements that we did not get to do because of the compressed time frame. I feel like I've brought up the town project a lot. One of the towns in the town project was Twilight Falls, which was basically our rural Waterdeep. We had every high level person in Verbabank had their own little castle there.
Interesting.
And so it sort of became a like, there's no way this town could actually exist in a region this size. And this is me going for realism in fantasy. It's like, there's no way this thing could exist. So what would happen if we were to say, I don't know, wipe it out? And because of the arc we were doing, which had a lot of inter character conflict, we created a lot of Verbabank canon, if you will, in the first 5 years, and I wanted to make use of that in our last 3-year plot arc. So we used a lot of the material and references that we generated in those first 5 years as part of our year 3 arc, and had a lot of conflict between our noble houses and our meta organizations. And Joe with Divers was doing a lot of stuff with Blackthorn and the Gnarly Orcs, and the Blackthorn Orcs and the Gnarly Forest. And we had in our plot arc that the elven clans of the Gnarly were getting pissed off at Verbabank because of Twilight Falls, and basically went amounted to them strip mining the Gnarly Forest. So we had the elves. Basically, I wanted to have the elves lure the Blackthorn Orcs into attacking Twilight Falls and just wipe the thing out. And we had some other elements thrown in because of Michael Menza, because he loves to make people recognize the consequences of their actions far better than I ever could. But we just couldn't get to it because we had to wrap up so much of that. So that's the one thing I wish we'd been able to do, a great arc with that. Just wiping out this town of people, and we would have had the requisite screaming and everything, and then we would have moved on.
Well, thanks,
but
Vernon.
Yeah, that's the one thing I wish we'd been able to do. And if anyone's interested, I've posted some of these plot arc documents that I did on some of the Yahoo groups. I don't know if I put it on Sages of Greyhawk, but I put it on a few others. And I'm happy to shove this stuff out there because there's so much material that I would love for people to use in their home campaigns.
Christoph, why don't you bring up that, and then we'll go to do the tribute after. That
you.
Ties in real quick. Go ahead. You're muted.
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
All it is just that
I do it all the time, dude.
It's a different program. I'm pushing a different button. I was pushing a button though. But so thank you, Jay. What Vernon was just saying, a lot of the content that's out there, a lot of the individual triad members or people who played in regions or things like that, people still have. And unfortunately, because of the nature of the internet, we always think once it's on the internet, it's there forever. And unfortunately, it's not always the case. And so like some of our viewers, either now live or later when they rewatch this, are going to say, hey, I played that. And I remember I downloaded a document from the regional website one time, or whatever. But especially all of you guys and all of the other triad members that y'all still know, or the names or whatever. One of the things that Greyhawk Online is trying to do, because our purpose is archiving largely, but we're creating and sharing for the world of Greyhawk, is that we want to share not only old documents like Vernon's talking about from the town project, and all of the meta orgs and meta organizations and things like that we had. But all of the stories and all of the, we were talking about how NPCs got elevated to a retired level and, got to be in stories at that point. We would love any of the viewers, any of the people that y'all know, or even you guys yourself, we would love for anybody to work with GHO.
I'm
and
relinking
share
it
some
again.
of the stuff.
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
A second time.
And we're actually we're we're trying to work with some of the previous Triad members to get some of those old websites and re-host them now, so that modern fans, 20 years after the campaign started, can go back and find places where they can all find those original maps from Living Greyhawk, and they can find all the NPC lists, and they can find the cast of characters for that region and all of those things. And we already have Grand March Live is on Greyhawk Online, so I believe it's Greyhawk Online /Grand March, or GreyhawkOnline.com/Grand March. We just recently got confirmation from Daniel Maynard, who was with Tuesday.
Mayrand.
I'm sorry, I said his name wrong. Mayrand. Daniel Mayrand. He talked to, I think, the last 3 official Triad members at the very end of them. Oh, were you one of them, JP?
Oh, I was the one who actually wrote the site.
Oh, okay. Well, we're gonna have to talk after then, because when I talked to Daniel, he told me he'd talk to everybody. So anyway,
Yeah, he talked to a lot of other guys too. I mean,
so
Dan.
for the viewers, we're actually hopefully a lot of the stuff that you guys are hearing all of the Triad members talk about tonight. Hopefully, in the future, we'll be able to sort of resurrect some of those sites.
Nice.
It would be fantastic. I know a lot of Jason Zavoda's like, I need access to this material to index it, right? So as an example, and just people want to see the old content. I want to see it. So that would be fantastic, Christoph. I hope that
we probably shouldn't dive too deep into the IP issues with the mods.
Right. No, absolutely.
That may be better served for a different discussion with a lawyer like Britt.
Yeah, the adventures will never be available on Greyhawk Online. But
all the other stuff, the meta stuff, would be, very neat, and probably I can't think of a reason why it wouldn't be able to be shared. It was freely shared during the campaign.
Fan content.
But it still does contain, obviously, WotC IP. But anyway, saving the websites themselves is a Herculean task, and I, applaud you, Christoph, for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So let's get on to a little bit more somber subject. Vernon, you want to talk about Rob?
Yeah. One of the members of the Verbabank Triad was Rob Silva. Rob worked with Michael Menza and myself from 2006 until mid-2007. Rob was a phenomenal player. I can't speak enough about how much Rob gave to the region, how much he did for it. Just he was a presence like no one else if you were ever at a convention with him. He passed away last February, and I've posted this elsewhere about the kind of working relationship I was fortunate to have with the people I worked with in Verbabank. Michael and Rob were and are some of the absolute best. In a job as stressful as being a campaign administrator for something like Living Greyhawk, you have to be able to get along and click with the people you are working with like that. And I can't speak highly enough to how good that working relationship was. And Rob wasn't just an excellent Triad member. He was my friend. And Greg Marks probably worked with him and played with him a lot more than I did. And and he can tell you a lot more stories than I can. But I can tell you that working with Rob was a privilege that I think I got the better half in the working relationship with. And when I was asked to be on this podcast, I could think of no better tribute to my friend than to dedicate my appearance here to his memory and everything he did for Illinois and Indiana, and even in Wisconsin. He was a judge for everything there. The man worked tirelessly, and I miss my friend. And for anybody out there who's listening and may know Rob, I would ask you to join me in raising a glass to his memory and saying thank you to him for all that he did for Living Greyhawk and for the players of the campaign.
Hey, Rob.
Here.
Well said, Vernon.
Yep.
Have a good one, man.
Thank you for that, Vernon. Really appreciate
Yep.
it.
It was
Definitely.
the very least I could do for him.
Yeah, he was a great guy.
A lot of us knew Rob, and he's the kind of guy you want to have at your table.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
And he never left organized play. He stayed a really active member the whole time. It was the news. He had his heart attack during the last Winter Fantasy, and he was originally supposed to come, and then he couldn't make it for another reason. And we got the news in the middle of it, and that night it was interesting to see just hundreds of people came out to raise a glass.
It's a great thing about this game is that you create friendships for life, you know, and
Yeah.
that's what a lot of, like, when we started playing, Vernon, you and me, and a lot of the other older people here. I mean, you know, I've been playing for 40 years. My friends since I was 12. You understand that, and you grow bonds, and it's not just about the game. You know, it's more about, you know, the relationships with those people. And I can understand how special he was to you. So thank you for that. I'm going to
Thank you.
I'm going to ask now. I know we may run a little late tonight. Hopefully, everyone's okay with that because we got a lot. You know, I know people still want to ask some questions, but we won't go too much over the 10 p.m. I just wanted to ask everyone now: are you still playing D&D? What edition do you play? And are you playing Greyhawk? So I'll start with Joe.
Sure. And unfortunately, no, I don't.
Okay.
And a lot of that has been a factor of time. When I moved out to the Northeast, there was not as much role playing as there is in the Midwest. There are groups here, but they've been with their groups, it feels like forever. So it was hard to kind of find a group that I was part of. Now, I did have a Savage Worlds group for a long time, but like most groups I ended up being the DM. I'm also a novelist, and then I went to grad school, and it wasn't possible to make a good weekly adventure for people. I needed something I could sit in on, and board games are really big out here. So that ended up kind of I don't want to say replacing. That's not the right. Filling that spot. It's easier just to show up, sit down, learn a game, and leave without having to create. And honestly, as an aside, for as much as Greyhawk, they were written slightly more generically to accommodate everyone's characters. So you didn't have that same individual investment you might with a home campaign. But being involved for so long and on such an epic scale, I never experienced that again with any of the home campaigns I did after Greyhawk. So none of them were ever as good. Which kind of made it easier to move into board gaming instead.
Joe, I'm going to put this out to you right now. You're streaming. There's no reason why you can't learn Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds and get it.
Those
together.
didn't exist when I first started playing online. It was with AOL Instant Messenger.
I know.
7 hours.
You stream, and
none of that stuff existed.
It's true, but you can really. I'm saying this from
a
streamer. You could get together your group, a lot of these guys like that. You know, play once a month or whatever, and you could stream it and use Fantasy Grounds Roll20, and I think you'd have a great time.
I don't actually like these guys, though. I've been.
But
I think he's calling you out, Joe.
No, I
think he is.
There is the reason I'm doing this for selfish reasons. That we need more Greyhawk streamers. We do.
Okay.
Right. Everyone will agree to that. Yeah, we need more Greyhawk streamers. So
Jay is actually giving an entire seminar just on live streaming at GaryCon.
Yes, I am.
I mean,
there you go.
It's a thing now. And Joe, you're right. None of this stuff existed. Like I was saying earlier, Facebook didn't exist when the campaign started. MySpace. People look at MySpace now and they're like, "What? That old thing?" I mean, but none of this stuff existed, and we have had such a boom. I mean, Jay, the show we're having right now, and Jay's channel in general is a perfect example of that. You know, that now that now that these venues are there, things are just growing exponentially.
Thank you. But it's a team effort. It's Anna's maps. It's Brian Blomklotz's heraldry I use. It's all the interaction we have on the Greyhawk Online Discord. It's a team effort, right? It just is. And I think that there's another. It's a reforming of what Living Greyhawk had in its heyday. We just got a group and we're doing things a little differently. So
to answer Celestial's question, I still have my second edition books. I played most heavily third edition, and a friend actually gave me fifth edition, and fifth edition actually isn't that bad. We will not speak of the edition that will never be spoken of, though.
Mike Wilson Celestian does a lot of coding in Fantasy Grounds for second edition. He wrote Temple of Elemental Evil in 2E. It is freaking awesome. You should see the maps on it. So and some other adventures like N1. Call of the Reptile God. So I would suggest if you want to get that feel back for Greyhawk, there's capability in Fantasy Grounds for it. Definitely.
So were we still on the other? Oh, there's Casey with second.
Yeah. S4's coming. Awesome. All right, Greg, how about you?
That's prepping for Jay's charity show.
Yeah, lots of good prepping.
So for me, we still break out our Greyhawk characters sometimes and still play 3-5. Once in a while, I'll get a first or second edition game, but like we've talked about, a lot of this has been about forming relationships, and in some ways, I was unwilling to let that go with the end of Living Greyhawk. I have run organized play for Wizards of the Coast ever since. So I've been one of the main organizers. I'm currently the content manager for our Forgotten Realms campaign for Wizards of the Coast for the D&D Adventures.
Wow, didn't know that.
Yeah, so those stories, all the stories that you hear, I mean, those are written by myself and Travis Woodall. So that whole plot we come up with. And
wow.
So, I mean, yeah, I clearly play D&D pretty much all the time.
It's awesome.
Full time.
How about you, JP?
He's living the dream.
Well, I kind of, when LG ended, I kind of went through withdrawals. I joined the Living Forgotten Realms admin group. It didn't fit the style of what I wanted to play. I drifted to Pathfinder, and I served there as a venture captain for a year and a half, 2 years. And then I just left that behind, and I went to start my own thing. So now I actually have published books. Yep. Hey! I publish books under First One's Entertainment. So this is my Akhmet setting. It's ancient Egypt that's inspired. And I play Adventure League, which is one of the reasons I still hate Greg Marks.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, I've been kind of been playing. I have not been, I'll kind of admit that I've never been like a Greyhawk kind of like massive freak out. Like, this is love. I always played it when I was younger, like homebrewed, and then I got into Greyhawk much later, and then I got into to LG, and I still love it. I just don't. I have to pick the time, so I play with the kids in my setting or in just Forgotten Realms.
Cool.
Yeah.
Vernon, how about you?
I do not play anywhere near as much as I did before, and I didn't play a lot once I became Triad. I played some Pathfinder First Edition because that's where the friends in my area down here kind of gravitated to. They haven't gravitated to Pathfinder Second Edition, so we'll see if that leads to us doing 5e or any sort of variant thereof. I've got a wife who is a non-gamer, and she is my sanity anchor.
Same here.
And I've got two. I've got two kids who are just now getting to the age where they might be interested in some of this, but up until this point, they really haven't been, and that's been my focus. I'm also trying to do some voice acting. You may have heard earlier, I like to do some voices, and I've got a really fancy schmancy microphone.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I've done some audio dramas that are audio drama podcasts that are out there, but I'm kind of putting a focus on that and paying and keeping my day job and being with my family. My family, they were always the first things that were important to me, even even before Greyhawk, and I kind of keep that going. I wish I had time to do more stuff, but it's just not there.
He's also still trying to quit the Verbabank triad, but every time he tries, he
Yeah.
just
It's pull me back in. It's every time something comes up, I've got to jump in there because I also have control issues. And
we didn't know that about you.
yeah, no.
Learning
I
new things about Vernon.
I think that's a prerequisite though for being a triad member.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
in our own
that's
way? We all decided we could do this better
Absolutely.
once there was an opening.
You just said
not only could we do it better, everyone else would do it worse.
You guys have it
can
wrong.
always-
I was the one doing it right.
Yeah.
And Verbabank can always make use of one more town in the area. So
Oh,
Casey,
I let the players make the towns.
I just love how well written up that area is for towns. I know sometimes we get some people on the Greyhawk Online Discord who take it a little too far, right, Christoph, with that area. Well, that's a little inside joke. So I think
just to kind of halfway touch on it though. Seriously, guys, there are people that like come into the Greyhawk Online Discord and they'll be like, hey, is there information on this town? I found it on a map. Where do I learn about blah, 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 blah? And I will often, and I cannot tell you how often, I'll often
Once
have
a
to
week.
quote. I'll have to quote things, little excerpts and little tidbits, and post and tell them, this is where this town comes from. This was the Verbabank Town Project. This was, a little fort in the Bandit Kingdoms or whatever. I mean, the stuff you guys all created, I mean, people still look for it.
Yep.
That is so funny. I mean, Joe's jokes about Verbabank or divers being a joke. Verbabank didn't have much for it beyond the Temple of Elemental Evil, and we weren't allowed to use that for the first 3 years. So we just kind of grew used to not using it for anything. So we had to invent our own canon, if you will. So that's where a lot of those towns sort of came from. All the players' imagination. We can't take credit for them, but we tried to wedge them into adventures wherever we could because it was just sort of a perk for the players. Hey, you made this town. Let's at least give you a chance to play an adventure in it.
Exactly, sharing it with people.
And we should explain real quick for the people who didn't get to play that we were all told there's certain regions of the game world that were off limits.
Yes.
Not just the core region, but for instance, in the Bandit Kingdoms, we were originally told that the city of Stoink was off limits because the Circle had plans to use it,
right?
Because it's in the Gary Gygax novels and all of that. And they never did use it. So eventually we just said to hell with you because we're the BK and we started setting adventures there. I'm sure the other regions had some sort of similar experience where they were told this is off limits, you can't use it. And then when nothing ever happened with it, they probably just went ahead and used it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, you
just
guys
sorry
were
to
lucky
segue
you
there.
had stuff in there. Tusmit was a circle in the map that we knew Allied joined IUs during the Greyhawk Wars, and for some reason the Pasha was changed.
Sometimes the plans go awry or it gets forgotten.
That's a whole
That's
a whole nother episode where we bitch about early triads killing off major NPCs from canon because they wanted to insert their own NPCs. Some regions were very notorious for this, or some triad members, but that could be its own 2-hour bitch fest.
So
that would be the therapy session for triad.
2 hours for the county of Ernst only.
Well, hey, we can make that happen. So that's the great thing is that we have this medium available. So I have a raise of hands who will come back on a future episode if you're invited. No, Casey. Yeah, okay. Excellent. So
Casey is
it's great.
We're going to be reaching out to all of you, and we'll be setting up some future Legends and Lures. Or if you can't, Sunday night works better, and for some reason we could do it even on a Gab, and we'll do whatever, but we'll keep it. We want to keep this flowing and keep all the communication going with this. So let's close out with how about we're getting close to 10. How about we all. We'll go around and we'll do it, including everyone, and we'll do a round table on a final thought you have, just in general, wherever you want to go. And let's start with Anna.
Oh, it's a time for yeah. It's
Yeah,
a lot of things going on.
Your shout outs are quick.
Yeah, so yeah, I just launched the 576 map. It's
Woo.
you can download it on my website, and it's not the final version of it. It's the release candidate. My patrons have had it now for various iterations for the past like 4 months, and it was so stable that I didn't get any complaints. And I realized now is the time to get it out. So there will probably be a couple of updates. People will find typos and things that obviously went wrong. And once that is done in hopefully a couple of weeks, because there will be now probably 1,000 eyeballs at least looking at it and sending me emails about things and so on. So then probably at least within a month, there will be a final version that comes out in all the usual formats. So there will be a layered PDF, there will be AI, PSB, easy zoo online in various formats and stuff. So that's the main thing that have happened, so to speak. But now I also have, since GaryCon is coming up in like a month, so I have now started a couple of projects that I will have to dig into the future projects, because now I'm all of a sudden have time over, thanks to my patrons giving me time to work on this for several days a week. And so I have a couple of new projects that I'm going to show because I have a seminar at GaryCon, a 2-hour seminar, and I will show a lot of concept art and some new stuff for 2 new Greyhawk projects that have so far not been announced. And I'm going to keep the lid on until my seminar. There will be some really cool things coming, and there will be a handout to all the participants for that. And my patrons will get all that info while at GaryCon too. So I will give a special PDF and a whole bunch of concept art, and some of it is really cool. You're going to love it. So that's really really cool. Yep.
So next week's Legends and Lore is basically geography and classic locations is a veiled way of saying we're going over Anna's map.
that's my fault.
Yeah. I love. I'm gonna love this episode because we'll talk about some of the classic locations. You know, S4, where is it, Tomb of Horrors, all that. But Anna added a bunch of Carlos Lysing adventure locations on the map too. We got to go over those. You know, we got to go over Altamira again because that's one thing I have, and a couple other things on the map. We're gonna just go through it and have a fun time with it. So that'll be a great one for next week. Cannot wait. Yep, absolutely. So, Anna, you good? Oh my gosh. Sure.
Yeah, I think so. I have a couple of I will be, but Christoph will talk about another seminar that I will be on the panel for GaryCon, and then I have one other seminar that me and Alyssa Faden and a guy called Fear Mendel, that is the cave mapper, he calls himself. He does awesome maps on leather and stuff. So Fear and Alyssa and me, we were going to do a kind of a mapping brainstorming seminar where a bunch of people will come, and we will simply just talk about the process. They will throw out difficult things for us to map, and we will kind of talk about it. So it's kind of a little work session, but something we just wanted to have fun and meet up together. That was the whole idea, and we turned it into a seminar. So that will come too. Yep.
Mike, what's brewing?
Well, I don't have anything planned personally for GaryCon. I just plan on going to all my friends' seminars and heckling them.
Yes.
But no. But more immediate, I'm still doing the blogging on Greyhawkery. If you go on there now, you can see some of my latest stuff. I have a article on one of the rulers of Ull, and a really long, well-researched article on the Flight of Fiends.
It's awesome.
Which I didn't know anything about Flight of Fiends until I started digging into it more, and it's pretty cool.
That's how it always happens.
And now, after this lengthy discussion, I might be pondering a post on a Living Old campaign, just for fun and giggles.
That would be pretty cool.
Because I think that's one of them areas that they never touched in Living Greyhawk. Maybe JP knows.
Oh no, it was not. I think I touched it in like one of the final adventures, but nothing major.
Cool. That's about it.
Christoph.
Well, so as Anna said, there are multiple seminars going on at GaryCon this year, which is about 8 weeks away or so, I believe now. It's March 25th. And Greyhawk Online is going to be presenting a seminar, and it's creating and sharing for the world of Greyhawk. And we're going to be, much like Anna, we're going to be having some interesting announcements for Greyhawk Online, but we're also doing, I personally am going to be a member of a panel seminar that several of us are actually going to be on, and Anna is one, Jay is another, Mike is a third.
Oh, okay, I'm in.
Well, I mean, if you don't want to, I mean, we'll just kick you right out.
Right.
No, I had gotten the impression you were, Mike, but I don't know how much we've talked about that. But anyway, so it's a panel seminar, and it's going to be kind of a question and answer thing. We're going to be putting out some methods for fans to contribute questions to the panel seminar, both live at the seminar and from fans on Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. And so we're gonna have kind of a presentation and a Q&A. And that's a 2-hour seminar. The Greyhawk Online one itself is a 2-hour seminar, and one of the big things that it's going to be focusing on is going to be all the diverse ways, or the diverse ways? No, sorry. Anyway, all the diverse ways that we all make Greyhawk our own. And much like the way that we've all been talking about, each region here had its own flavor in Living Greyhawk, and each triad, each iteration of when there were new triad members, they had their own visions. Players are very, very much the same way, that everybody playing Greyhawk at home, they all have their own. And so we mentioned the Earth Journal. The Earth Journal is actually going to be in print again this year for Greyhawk, for GaryCon. So it'll only be the second time in history that it's ever been in print, because it's always a free online PDF, which it will also be a free online PDF released at the same time. But the focus of it and the focus of the seminar is going to be what we're calling infinite worths. And so if there are writers out there, or any of you guys who are interested in sharing some of the unique ways that y'all changed Greyhawk for your regional campaigns, that's the kind of focus it is. What if Ayus did win in the Bandit Kingdoms, or what if what if High Folk was overrun by orcs, or whatever. I mean, just all of the different things that could happen, or even just what if Mordenkainen wasn't neutral, or what if basically it's almost like a what if edition.
What if this organization existed?
Yeah, what if the Circle of Eight wasn't around and there was a circle of generals instead?
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of options.
And so it's unlike some of the more recent ones that have been, folks, feuds, factions, NPCs, whatever. This is going to be kind of, there's fiction, there's all kinds of new things coming. And so Earth Journal 32 comes out for GaryCon 12 at March 25th. So we're looking forward to that.
We're all looking forward to it, because I remember how Menace 28 was last year. It was awesome to have that out, just have it in print. So, all right, let's go with the final 5 guests. Casey, we'll start with you. What would you like to say in closing?
So, I would guess I'd like to say that this has helped me remember what a great influence Living Greyhawk was on my life at that particular time where I was, and the friends I made. But look at the impact Living Greyhawk had on the hobby. Greg is at Wizards of the Coast running organized play. He came from Living Greyhawk. Bullman is at Paizo, created
seriously.
Pathfinder and Pathfinder 2. Came from Living Greyhawk. Eric Mona at Paizo came from Living Greyhawk. Teos Abadia. Yeah, I mean, so many people. Teos, was a massive play tester, if I understand correctly, for both 4th and 5th editions. And Greg could speak more to Teos, but great guy based out of Joff, and was very great that I got to meet and play with him. So we all made friends. Vernon's friend Rob, who unfortunately I didn't know, but those kinds of relationships are the result of gaming, and we all do that, but Living Greyhawk allowed us to do it in a much bigger way. Living Greyhawk set the
Whoops.
standard for living campaigns. Living City had preceded Finder Society. To me, is not a living campaign. So to me, Living Greyhawk is still the end all be all, but all past campaigns, all later campaigns, I believe, have learned from the lessons, good or bad, that Living Greyhawk brings. And I'm sure Greg could spend 2 hours talking about this is why I do things this way versus that way. And I would love to see that podcast one day, even though I haven't been as active in other campaigns as I'd like to have been. And then finally, I think we've seen that there's a Greyhawk resurgence. You know, people are willing to buy my book to learn about Living Greyhawk. Mike, quick plug for me, please. Throw it up there. And then at the same time, Wizards of the Coast is
Nice.
yeah, that was on cue. Another $5 for Mike. But at the same time, we're seeing Ghosts of Saltmarsh, which is a Greyhawk property, even though they've kind of packaged it so it'd be very easy to shoehorn into the Forgotten Realms. I'm currently running a 5e Ghosts of Saltmarsh campaign, and I'm using Reddit. Reddit has a sub-thread for Ghosts of Saltmarsh where I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And I can collaborate with other dungeon masters in 2020 and get ideas. And I think while that's not tied directly to Living Greyhawk, it's Living Greyhawk has shown that there is Greyhawk love, you know, from 2000 to 2008. And those players are still out there, and those players are having children, and those players work at Wizards of the Coast or Paizo, and they're developing the next content. So it all kind of, to me, ties back to that setting. And then finally, I would just like to say I'm very excited that Jay is going to have me on the charity event, and I am going to donate all sales of my book during the day of the charity event to the charity.
Beautiful.
As my way of saying thank you for allowing me to participate.
You're driving down from Boston to South Jersey, man. So that's dedication. So, and we've seen the pictures of this character. This is the actual character that Casey is playing from.
Yes, Garn.
Now he's been
Garn
Jake.
was my.
Good.
Sorry, Garn here was my Living Greyhawk character that I made to play in the region of Yeomanry. We briefly touched on this, and that we, as Triad members, we obviously couldn't play our own adventures. So we would often create characters to play in other regions. Garn here was the big dumb fighter that I would go and harass the Louisiana people with. And he was awesome because he was so dumb.
And he's been Jay campaigned 1E, 2E'd into a specialty priest of Kellenin. Okay, so I'm looking forward to that. And he's coming with Anna's character, who's going to be right out of the Dragon magazine, an Elven Cavalier, not the Cavalier Dragon 72, but the Elven Cavalier class, the subclass. So it's going to be cool stuff we use in our campaign. So I'm looking forward to that day. It's going to be a blast, and you know, it'll be for charity too. So but I'll talk about that during my part. So thanks, Casey. Appreciate it. JP, go for it. I think you're muted.
I will get off mute. Well, I mean, right now I'm working for my company, First Ones Entertainment, foelegacies.com. I mean, my next events, I'll be running some panels and some games at Mid-South Con in Memphis. That's in mid-March. I'll be doing similar thing at Conglomeration in Louisville, Kentucky, in mid-April. And I'll be at Gen Con running, I'm currently planning Gen Con with a massive, well, you can't see this, but this LG style planning there.
You got all your stuff approved?
Well, I approve it myself. So if you can look, you see that these are the names of my GMs and who's running what and at what slot. So,
oh man, cool.
And yeah, I'll be running from some of Akamet, which is one of my settings.
Nice.
5e. It's a great time. Just a few things other than the guys here. I want to give a shout out to Deanne, Alex, Dan Maran, who was mentioned, Farzan Zakakani, and Dave Geisinger. These guys really helped me do some awesome things. So we rocked it. So,
Can't wait.
and,
Thank you.
yeah.
Great.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
All right. So like everybody said, a lot of what LG stood for was about community. So my 3 plugs are sort of community based. I'll be appearing at Winter Fantasy in week and a half. About a couple weeks after that at Conflagration in Milwaukee, and then obviously I'll be at GaryCon with everybody else. So come see me, seminars, games, etc. But the plug I really have to give is, for me, regardless of the setting or the system, I could never let the community go. And so that's why I got to give the plug for D&D Adventures League. It's sort of living. I mean, it's still a living campaign-ish, but not to the extent that Greyhawk was. Greyhawk, you could have such an impact that we just aren't able to do. But it doesn't mean Greyhawk has died. Because I'm there, I have shoehorned Greyhawk in repeatedly. For example, at one of our competitive epics at GaryCon, well, previous one, we had Return to Ghost Tower, and the reward is the ability to play a living Greyhawk character that had been freed from Ghost Tower when you got trapped there back in 3.5. So you could bring your old character back. You got sucked into FR, but you could bring your old character back.
Nice.
So definitely play some adventure. And another big thing that the community has given us that we're able to do now with the internet and Adventures League is we raise a lot of money for charity. Obviously, Extra Life is a huge deal. We raise a ton of money for kids. But the charity we got going on right now on the dmsguild.com is Fight Fires with Games. So we're raising money to help the people in Australia. There is currently a $150+ value of various books, including the new Pip Yap's Guide to All the Hells. So this hardcover, the PDF of it's about $20. It's $9 of the now. What's the bundle's $9.99. So $155 worth of stuff for $9.99. All the money goes to help charity.
And it's right on DM's Guild.
Yeah, this is normally $18 for a PDF. You could get it for $10 if that's the only thing you wanted. And there's tons of other good stuff in there.
Well, thank you for yes, please, thank you for that shout out. If you have a way to link that into chat,
sure,
please do that.
I will do so.
Excellent, Joe.
So my blood sugar is low, so I'm going to make this quick. I just started streaming about 2.5 weeks ago at J_Lloyd_, and I'm going to pop that into chat. Yep. I am not an affiliate yet, so anyone who follows my channel is doing me a great service. I primarily do video games, World of Tanks and Rainbow Six Siege. I have done some map making streaming while I'm working on a new novel. So I had a lot of fun doing that. I want there to be more, and apparently I have to start gaming again. So it'll be, especially because we did really well not telling stories about each other's characters or our own characters tonight. And if we come back, I have stories about Vernon.
Oh, I can't wait.
To tell.
I can't wait. I can't wait for the. We got to do that in other episodes. In-depth stories, highlight moments. We've just scratched the surface tonight, guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
We just the tip. Only the tip. Sorry.
I mentioned his name. Andrew McCullough is the reason why I got to do LG for as long as I could. I was very poor when I was Triad, and he let me sleep on his couch every weekend. His son actually passed away a year ago, and he played LG starting at 5 years old. So I had known that kid since he was little. And so I don't have a picture, but in memory for him as well. And then lastly, I followed the link to Greyhawk Online. I joined the Discord. So in true Divers fashion, I want people who are on the Discord to answer me this question. Where on the alignment chart would an action fall if you disintegrated someone's hand without their consent, but then paid to have it regenerated? Where's that on the alignment chart? Answer me on Discord. I want to hear your.
Oh, that's, okay. Sounds good.
No. We'll see if you're from Divers or not.
Yeah, excellent.
Starting controversy.
And then, last but not least, the Paul Lynn of the night. Vernon, right in the middle. So
Well, I would love to answer your question. I have nothing so fancy or grandiose as to promote as everyone else. I'm in awe of everything everyone else has been able to accomplish. I'm trying to get into doing voice acting, and I placed a link to my my Facebook group, Voices by Vernon, in the chat.
Good.
You can find some work I've done if you search for Star Trek: A Call to Unity. I'm a voice on that. I'm also, which is the fan Star Trek production. I'm also going to be a voice in an upcoming Star Wars fan production. It hasn't been released yet, and I don't know how much the creator wants it to get out. So I will be doing a voice of an evil Yoda. So my job is to replace Frank Oz when Yoda died, or when he passes away, because I love doing Yoda. So but I'm in my free time I'm doing karate with my daughter.
Nice.
And we're both green belts, and we're going to be testing for purple belt in March in our karate style Shito Ryu. And
Nice.
so that keeps us busy. And
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
And I hope you kick her ass.
And I still managed to find time to jump in to respond to some Greyhawk question, because I can't let go. I have so many fond memories of doing this.
Well, I hope this gets the fire back in everyone, that the group here that we've been working for a long time to really push back Greyhawk into prominence. It may not ever get to that point, but there's a lot of activity in the Greyhawk world, and just when you get onto that Greyhawk Online Discord, you'll see there's a lot of great people on there. Thank you all for such a great night. I'm going to do some shameless plugs. Tomorrow night we continue with Trials of the Legion Part 2. This is high level adventuring for us, as high as we usually get, around 11th and 12th level. It's in the Shield Land, so there's always a lot of disturbing things going on in my Shield Lands campaign. So please check that out tomorrow at 7:30. And then this Sunday we're gabbing, and we're going to delve into dwarves. We'll talk about dwarves at Greyhawk. So Principality Ulick, you know how I've turned the Prince of Ulick into probably not the best character on the side of good versus evil. So we'll talk about that on Sunday. But what I really want to promote is this. I'm going to pop this up. Boom. Here you go. Anyone going to GaryCon? Here are my events. Okay, events I am hosting. There you go. All right. So Thursday, if you want to play in my game 1E 2E with miniatures, it's a little scaled down version though. I'll bring what I can. Horror in the Hools, my joint adventure with Carlos Lysing, is Thursday at 9 a.m. Okay, and then a Delve into the Lord's Tomb, that's number 557, Friday at 9 a.m. It is a Greyhawk City adventure with a little bit of research into a mystery. I ran it at first at PAX Unplugged. Gaetano ran in both of them. So Gaetano will tell you, Gila, Favi, I ran these both at PAX. And then Saturday is my DM's streaming roundtable. I have myself, Nightheart Gaming, Predators Rejects, and Carlos Lysing all involved in that streaming seminar that Saturday. I figured that's enough for me, as being this in 40 years of gaming, my first ever GaryCon. So if you guys, sign up, please, if you're interested. And I look forward to all this stuff going on. And lastly, please, guys, we're looking forward to keep Saturday, February 15th open if you can. It is going to be a fantastic mega stream event. It's 24 hours at Greyhawk Gaming. It starts at 4 o'clock in the morning with Carlos Lysing DMing, and Jason Zavoda and the ever mysterious Tim are both playing in that game at 4 a.m. And then it'll finish up at 8 p.m. at my place, with Casey coming, Anna remoting in, and with Christoph coming. Christoph as well. So we'll finish it up. We raised $1,000 last year for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and this year's title is Return of the Falcon. So if you know the WGA series, this is in my campaign 15, 16 years later, after we actually did those. we have some really cool discussions on what each DM is doing. That'll be the Gabbin after the Super Bowl. What's the Super Bowl? February 2nd? February 9th, we'll do a whole Gabbin show that Sunday night with all the DMs on what we're going to, each one's going to do, kind of a prelude event for that. So we'll talk about all the fun things going on. Did I miss anything, guys? Hope you had fun tonight. Everyone have a good time?
Blast.
Good.
That was great.
You don't have to log off
Absolute blast.
while the exits are on because you
Yeah,
usually do
thank
an
you,
after Zoom party for a little bit. If you have to go, that's cool. Thanks all audience. This was a very, very, very popular show. Once again, I'll say this because I haven't said his name tonight. It wasn't Leonard Lakofka level, but it was close. So
He had to get the name in.
I had to get Leonard in because
Yes.
Leonard, as everyone knows, Leonard's going through chemo now. And he's he's
I didn't
doing
know that.
yeah, he's doing okay. He was in the hospital a while, but he's in and out. So he's he's been on this show. He's been on Gabbin twice and Legends of Lore once. So it's great to have him on. Hopefully we'll have him on again soon, and he'll feel up to doing it. So we'll have him on. He just loves to talk about stuff, so it's great. So all right, thank you all. I'm gonna run the charity
Thank you, Jay.
stream. Thank you. Guys, it was a pleasure. It was my honor and pleasure.
Fantastic.
Lots
of fun. Yep.
And it was great to see you guys again.
Yes.
Yeah, man. It's
really great seeing like
This was
everybody
a
out
hoot.
here.
I'm gonna have everyone on back in smaller groups, maybe guys who interact with each other, and we'll talk a little bit in detail about each Living Greyhawk area. Sound like a plan?
You got to get me
Sounds
and
like a
Joe
great
on
time.
together.
Yeah.
Ferg,
Greg, could you get Chris?
Possibly.
Good.
I'd have
I
to.
mean,
And, yeah, he's got a fairly young baby that's got him.
Yeah.
Well,
And get
Good
men.
for him.
like I said, we can do these on Sunday night as well if we have to, if it works for someone as well. Wednesday night or Sunday, we'll work it out. So
Yeah, Greg talked to Michael as well. I tried to mention this to him, and I don't think he fully got what was going on. I think he'd be good on this.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Let's figure it out
Right,
later. I
right.
need food. Shut up, everyone.
Yeah.
I haven't had dinner yet.
Did I hit the right button?
Elf is about to
I
die.
hit the right button. Woo!
And we fade out to black.
Snow.
Oh, it's snowing
the
in my
thing-
campaign right now in the Shield
Yeah.
Lands, so on my maps. So
Who put this together for you? Because it's awesome.
this is Frank from Nightheart Gaming, a great partner of mine, and he's the stream from 4 to 8. He's also he's the second best miniature streamer on Twitch. So he does a lot of he does a lot of terrain. He's great, and he has a studio in his house. He will be at GaryCon with me to do the streaming seminar, and it's fantastic. He did a great job.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I gotta log out.
Have a great one,
Yeah.
man. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for coming, JP. It was
I got to
great
get
getting
back
to
to my
talk to
wife
you.
and
JP.
family.
This felt like,
Thank you
Living
for-
Greyhawk ended like 25 minutes ago. I mean, really. You just say Living Greyhawk, and this is exactly what I expected from this conversation.
Awesome. It's great.
Yeah.
Glad we could bring it together.
Christoph, I'll see if I can get you countyofverts.com.
That is fantastic.
I don't know if I still have it. I think I deleted most of it.
Well, and honestly, that's fantastic. I still like it for that. And remember, like, we still have certain things like the Internet Archive. So if there are blanks, we may be able to fill some in by importing some stuff. I can do the coding to import the other HTML and whatnot. So any help y'all can give.
I'll look it up, man.
All right.
Thanks, folks.
Fantastic.
See ya.
JP out.
Hey, later,
JP.
Joe. I got to go.
See you, Vernon.
See you, Vernon. Have a good one, man. Thank you so very much. We'll be in touch.
You are most welcome.
This is it, and then we'll call the stream tonight.
So were we still talking over the outro, Jay, or
What's that?
were we still talking over the outro?
Yeah,
Oh, then I should.
that's the standard.
That's a shtick.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
shit.
well, I didn't know if we were still.
No, that's fine. I
Being heard or
have
not.
no problem. Yeah, that's our shtick. It's been that way for like a year and a half of us. you
No,
know,
I get that. I just didn't want to say anything like
inappropriate.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I think I'm gonna get here in just a couple of minutes too. But Casey, I'm really looking forward to getting to see you when you come down.
Yeah, me too. I waiting on Jay to send me back like the refined, character for Garn playing. Well, I don't know if you need more from me, or if you're gonna have the character sheet fleshed out, or
it's good. And
if what I sent you was enough.
There's one or two minor things that I just said, I don't care. Like you got one too many proficiencies because taking the weapon is a proficiency in itself. But I don't care. It's a one-night fundraiser, man.
Right.
It's not a big deal.
All right. Well, cool.
But also,
I think you need to send me the prestige class if you haven't already, so I can.
Oh, I thought I sent that to you.
Finish doing all the other
Have a good
stuff.
night, everyone. See
Did
you
you?
tomorrow
I'll
night.
check. I've been busy.